So, hey everyone, happy Tuesday. I'm used to saying this on Friday because I do the Friday live show. I'm going to roll the intro in a little bit, but in just the meantime, happy Zcash Day, or is that what we're calling it?
It's a Zcash birthday. Happy
Nice.
birthday, Zcash.
See, I have my Zashi shirt on that I got from.
I wore my Shielded Lab shirt.
You got the work shirt on. There we go. It's
Yeah,
like had very Superman-esque kind of thing there.
yeah. And I tried to get. It's not quite Zcash yellow orange, but it's a yellow shirt, so it'll do.
Yeah, it is. I do kind of like how like the Zcash branding has been very much like yellow all the way through, but the Shielded Labs thing is just very like you know kind of a covert looking.
Yeah, yeah. We try to be like dark mode.
Yeah, I actually made a few like AI versions of the Shielded Labs shield that I
Uh,
used one in the thumbnail, but it's not super visible. Maybe I'll send it over and see if people want to use
yeah, yeah.
a less basic version of the logo.
Cool.
Yeah. So let me see if everything's. I'm streaming on Odysee, of course, on X, of course, and on YouTube. Anyone who's watching, let me know what you think of. Is the sound okay, etc. Because with live streams, there's always that like, things can go a little bit different. So
Yeah.
just making sure everything's working out great. All right. So I think we could probably just roll the intro and then get into this. All right.
All right.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey everyone, officially, hello. Happy Tuesday. This is a special Zcash anniversary edition of the podcast. And I'm joined by the one and only Shielded Mark. How's it going, man?
Hey, very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for being on. And usually I just kind of like roll right into these intro type things, but I always have my when I record it, I put the little sponsor shill right before we really get started. And since it's
Okay.
not recorded, I'm going to do the little live read kind of version of
Okay.
that. So, which is not very long, and I guess it's potentially what's the term Zec adjacent because of ATMs and such. So, Coin ATM Radar. This podcast is very proudly sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange, which could freeze your account, hello trade ogre, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you could buy or sell cryptos for cash. On the website, search if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. You search by coin and address, geo area, etc. And you can also compare actual rates across different ATMs. So go to coinatmradar.com, which is coinatmradar.com. And I'm pretty sure that Zcash is one of the few. Yeah, it's on the short list of coins supported. Actually, let me switch back to the screen there. But yeah, it's like Bitcoin. Apparently, there's some Lightning Network supporting ATMs, which I had no idea about. Bitcoin Cash, Ether, Dash, Litecoin, Zcash, Monero, Dogecoin, Tether, and apparently Ripple and USDC. So it's a pretty
Wow.
short list to be on there. But yeah, I have not personally encountered an ATM that supported Zcash directly. But then again, I don't usually go to those because I don't really have fiat. So why would I be going to a machine to, you know, that's kind of how it works. So yeah.
I can talk about this. I was on
Yeah.
independently. I was on Coin ATM Radar just out of curiosity, and I found out that there's one near me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is in like Dorchester, Massachusetts, or something, or somewhere in Braintree had a Zec ATM, and I was surprised, but also delighted to see
Yeah.
uh, that. So that was really cool. Good job, Coin ATM Radar, Coin whatever.
Yeah. Do you have any, did you manage to see what like the fees were on those?
No, I wasn't paying that much attention. I just wanted to see if there was one and where it would be.
Yeah. That
I
makes
also
sense.
don't have a need for a crypto ATM.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do stuff with fiat, like pay my real life bills and things like that. I get paid in Zec, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my time is spent, off ramping to pay small bills and things like that. But I try to hold most of what I have in Zcash.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, um, probably the majority of my, well, I don't know, majority, a chunk of my income in 2023 was in Zach for the grant that I got to do the 12 episode Zcash podcast. And
nice.
at the time, integrations and things like that were just not very great. So I didn't really have a lot of ways to spend it. So I kind of didn't. And so,
Yeah,
in hindsight, I mean, unfortunately, like, I've been using crypto for over a decade, and unfortunately, everything I don't use tends to like go way up in value. So, I mean, it worked out. Listen, it worked out well for me now, and there are more options now. So
well,
that's pretty fun.
you're right. If we were having this conversation a month ago, we would still be talking about, there's not really a lot you can do with Zcash. Like you can just
Mm-hmm.
guide hold it, but there's not a lot of maybe like 3 or 4 months ago or 6 months ago, like there's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of DeFi stuff you can do with it. There's not a lot of bridges and there's a lot of things. And then there was just this explosion of activity and
Yeah.
integrations, and which created this sort of snowball groundswell effect. And now everybody and their mother wants Zach on their DEX or their perp platform or whatever it is now, whatever the new hot DeFi thing is right now. It seems like people are clamoring to get Zach
Mm-hmm.
in there. They're trying to get Elon Musk to tweet about it. There's like
Oh
all
god,
this stuff
are
going
we
on.
still on that? Are we still on the Elon
I'm not
Kingmaker?
we. There's no we on that. I am not
Yes.
part of that shilling
Mm-hmm.
Zach thing. I'm a Zach Posy Maxi on Twitter because I
Mm-hmm.
have to
Yeah.
believe in the mission, and I
Of
think
course.
it's helpful to interact with the community and stuff at the lowest levels, like in the trenches with people who have
Mm-hmm.
one Zec or 10 Zec or something like that. Go into Twitter space with like 7 people and talk to them about stuff, answer their
Yeah.
questions and things like that. I think that's really important. It's like Alexander the Great digging trenches with the infantry troops. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really good to get the full holistic view of the community.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, and like there have been some trenches, and like I was at ZCon in 2023, and it was a good event. It was also probably the Zcash bottom moment, kind of, where like you could tell there was like everyone was still optimistic about the tech and really passionate, but just there was a little bit of like uncertainty. And then I remember I do remember Josh getting like testy with some people on stage and stuff like that. It was kind of fun.
well, was
And
that Barcelona?
yes,
Okay, so I mean, yeah, that's not the only thing that happened on stage at Barcelona,
yeah.
too. I was there. I gave a talk
I guess
about
we
my.
didn't run into each other, maybe, or maybe we did. I
No,
don't know.
no, yeah, I don't know. I gave a talk about this project called Ziggurat,
I remember
which
hearing the
was
name.
yeah, which was a networking testing tool and network crawler
Mm-hmm.
and network visualization tool.
And I
And
must have. I think I do kind of remember you, but it didn't like.
likewise, yeah,
Yeah.
we've definitely crossed paths before. And admittedly, I for about a year got burnt out on crypto and decided to not,
That's
you know,
shockingly easy to do in this wild space we're in.
tried to get a normie job as like an IT coordinator. My thinking was like, I'll
Mm-hmm.
just get a job I can be completely brainless at, and you know, not care about the job and just focus on family and hobbies and things like that. But that didn't work out, and I'm back.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the Zcash's mission was one of the main things that brought me back into the space. I reached out to Jason, the executive director of Shielded Labs, and I said, "Hey, what are you up to over there? What are you doing?" And he was basically like, "Yeah, come interview."
Mm-hmm.
And that was March. So since March, I've been at Shielded Labs working on
Nice.
a number of things. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I've sort of, I've been in crypto for a long time, obviously, but it was like somewhere around 2021, 2022 or so. I,
Mhm.
I wanted to take a break, kind of. I looked for other things to do. And I'm like, I'm still going to live on crypto and advocate for it, but Let me see what else is going on, and then it just like sucked me right back in full speed. And it's kind of funny how like Josh Swayard and I sort of had very similar, like the timing was not very different as far as us like rage quitting for whatever, like rage quitting and then being back in full speed.
And then
And also like just on the side note about everything's been happening, like he and I do a lot of the same types of things as far as like the partnerships, the vision for integrations and these kinds of things. And so like I recognize his work, like I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing there, like from a distance a little bit. And so when these things start all of a sudden popping off, I'm just like, I saw the work going into this a long time ago. And like, for example, with the Dex thing, I remember, I mean, I'm not going to send screenshots of DMs, but I remember telling him, you need to get on the Maya protocol. Just make this happen first. Like, we got to make this happen. And I actually did a forum post in the Zcash forum about that too. And, lo and behold, it's like, oh, why is Zcash on all these dexes? Can Monero get on Thorchain? Like all this stuff happening like now. And it's like, yeah, that's because the work started then,
Yes. Thank you for saying that, because that's a really important point. Is like, I use the analogy of an artist who can paint a painting in a weekend and sells it for $20,000, and they say, oh, that's a weekend's worth of work. And it's like, no, it's 15 years worth of practice and hard work and grinding so that I can do something in a weekend. And Zcash is now a 9-year on to the day project on mainnet, and it's it worked for 9 years, and the people that held for during down only for about 7 years now, and still worked and built and stuff like that. That's what allowed everything to become this overnight success that we're seeing in the last month.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the catalysts, and I called it out on a tweet, and I tagged Josh and you on it, and I said, like, if you just look at the checklist of things that they talked about, of all the issues and all the things we needed to deal with, those have all been addressed. So like, kudos to the ECC and to the Zcash Foundation and to the communities like Zach Hub and all the global communities and things like that. Like, everybody's just really been dug in and just working. And the ask to chair component of that is really what calls this. And I think that people want to live in a world where something like Zcash is successful. And I think a lot of the price that we're seeing is like their kind of a soulful expression of a belief that they have in privacy, in freedom, and things like that. So like, it's something that we all knew and nobody really wanted to pay for the privacy. But now it seems like people are starting to see what's going on with whatever government you're dealing with, or whatever institution is coming down on you, or whatever thing you need to, whatever prosecution you need to evade, or whatever it is. Like, I think it's starting to really to enter the mainstream, which is really, really, really gratifying to see, especially if somebody's been building privacy apps for like since 2014 or 2015 or something.
And I have to say, like, whatever crackdowns or things like that are happening are very limited. We're still in an extremely safe time. So for me, I'm glad to see that people are taking things seriously this early on, where we're going to be ready if there's something happening. And I think that that's something that I guess we could ramble on this for like ever, but that's something that the kind of brings me to the thinking about overhauling security models, because one of my personal biggest and I guess we'll go into the intro on what Shielded Labs is first, and then we'll go into sort of the other stuff. But like, one of my biggest I guess worries about Zcash is sort of, or has been, I should say, like the security / mining centralization, whatever thing like that. And so it makes sense to try to address that. So all that being said, what is Shielded Labs?
Shielded Labs is a Zcash support organization. It's one of 3 main core organizations. Maybe there's, you might be able to tie in something like Zach Hub, but generally speaking, there's the Electric Coin Company, which was previously the Zcash company, which founded Zcash. So it was founded by Zuko and his brother Nate worked there, and Sean Bowe worked there, and Dyra Emma Hopwood still works there. This is the OG
Mm-hmm.
Zcash people. Strad is another person. Then there's the Zcash Foundation, which was opened up later, which is a common thing you see in blockchain ecosystems, where there's sort of the for-profit company and then the nonprofit arm. And those were funded by something called the Dev Fund, which was 20% of the block rewards went to, support those companies. That obviously became very controversial and is something that is sort of parroted as FUD online from the other competitive communities. And finally, they modified the Dev Fund so that it goes into a lockbox, which are given out via grants, either by the Zcash community grants or by coin holder voted disbursements of tokens now. So there's still the 20% Dev Fund, but it's very moderated by grants now instead of just issued to the organizations.
Yeah. Now, real quick on that, first of all, is that live today?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's something called Network Upgrade 6.1, which was built off of Network Upgrade 6. It's not Network Upgrade 7 yet, which is probably sometime late 2026 or something like that. But that's all in place now. We have had coin holder grants. There's quarterly rounds of granting that you the audience should apply to. And one of the grants is a regular milestone-based grant program, and the other one is a retroactive grant program. So if you do a bunch of work, then you can get reimbursed for it. So there's different models, and but Shielded Labs is special because we don't benefit financially from any of that. Neither the old Dev Fund nor the new grants thing. We are funded by community donations, and we're eternally grateful to everybody who has donated to this point and made it possible for us to even exist. And that gives us some independence. The other thing about Shielded Labs is that it's a not US-based company. So there's a big thing about the centralization of the governance being US-based and being vulnerable to like the SEC's guidance under the previous administration and things like that. Guidance is a nice word for it, but you know what I'm talking about. The SEC's malice during the last
aggression. And I've been to some of those court cases. Like the SEC versus library had some court hearings here in New Hampshire, and I attended some of those. And it didn't work out well for library, but I witnessed that firsthand in the way the SEC was begging the judge not to rule on whether the token is a security or not. They just wanted to punish the company for selling the token as a security, but didn't want a ruling because they knew the ruling would say, well, it's not a security now. You can't sue anyone else over it. And they wanted to keep that punitive, like, gray area. It's some really ugly stuff that I've witnessed from that. And I'm glad that's
don't collapse the wave into a particle yet. Keep the Schrodinger's ruling open so that, that's nasty. And for better or worse, now we have one of the most crypto-friendly governments in the history of the known universe. So, that's interesting, and that works out well for us now. But governments change and things change, and governments you still run the risk of just one specific person getting a wild hair up their ass and deciding that they don't specifically like you, and then will do everything in their power to go after you. And if they're part of the government, they have a lot of power. So it's still
absolutely
risky and up in the air. So we are domiciled in Switzerland, and we try to hire as disparate as we can, given the specific technical requirements of a job, like working at a Zcash support organization, which requires knowledge of a already very intricate system and at least like dinner table conversation level knowledge of things like zero knowledge proofs and the cryptography behind what goes on. Like, you need to understand it at least a very high level, if not like one or two layers of the onion down. So we work on. I you know we never set out to for this specific goal, but right now it looks like we work on things that protect the economic integrity of the Zcash ecosystem and the security and the forward looking, if, as far into the future as we can, the sustainability of just the future of Zcash, making sure that it will survive as long as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Before we dive in a little bit deeper onto
Yeah,
how Shielded Lab works, just my thoughts on the the funding lockbox thing. So
yeah,
who has the keys to that? And this is just I just don't know, right? Who has the keys to
right, right,
that, and
right.
how from not just like a procedural standpoint, from an actual like technical structural standpoint, who manages that and disperses those grants? Is it like you know a certain group of individuals? Is it like a certain
Yeah, yeah.
threshold of key signatures of
You have
like how does that work?
right, right. You have so the three more, the actual transaction that happens on chain. Let's start
Mm-hmm.
there. Is a multi-sig transaction that disperses funds from the lockbox to whatever recipients are supposed to get it. And
Mm-hmm.
that multi-sig is ECC, Zcash Foundation, and Shielded Labs.
Mm-hmm.
So all three main core dev organizations need to all agree there at that level. Um, but by that
So that
point,
means it's a three of three multi-sig.
yes.
Interesting. I have some thoughts. I have some after that. Sorry, my
I,
brain's
I,
going a
I
million miles an hour.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
that's
I'm
pretty
like
cool.
90% sure that's true. I could be wrong
Mm-hmm.
about that. I don't follow you know, uh, the governance zips maybe as closely as I should, but
Mm-hmm.
that's my
Well,
understanding. Is that
same here. I don't. I try to
yeah,
follow everything I can, but
there's a
yeah.
lot of zips and there's a lot of movement in the zips and there's a lot of draft zips and pull requests. I'm a zip editor as well, so I've
Mm-hmm.
uh, since a little after I joined Shielded Labs, I've been attending zip editor meetings, but at this point, it's just me, just sort of like either screen sharing, so I'm forced to pay attention to what the actual really smart people are talking about,
Mm-hmm.
or just taking notes and trying to keep up and making sure I understand all the parts. And it's just a great way to learn about the system
Mm-hmm.
and all its parts. So, but if in order to get that 3 of 3, or if it's probably a 3 of 3, in order to
Mm-hmm.
get there, you would need to pass either an approval from the Zcash community grants, which is
Mm-hmm.
sort of your to use the metaphor of the United States government in a really loose, imprecise way.
Mm-hmm.
That's like your Senate. That's
Okay.
a voted in group of people. It's just, a handful of people that are voted in by the community that approve grants or deny grants, and they meet and talk about each of the things. And those are the milestone based grants. So from the grantee's perspective, I have an idea that I think would be really cool for Zcash. Let me put together a brief grant proposal and send it to the ZCG, and they can approve or deny it. And they can move pretty fast, and they can disperse pretty much small amounts of money to projects like that. But the ZCG has also, they do larger things, but they've also funded like the was it the RT Tor implementation. So some pretty heavy projects have been funded by the ZCG.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of that, you basically have like the reps, or really like as close to uh not quite like proof of stake voting, but it's coin holder weighted voting.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody can come in, and these are retroactive grants. So I've hosted a node for a year, or I've run this service like this new Zcash.me thing that's popping up all
Mm-hmm.
over Twitter right now. Um, you I've been running this service for a while, so please reimburse me for the time that I've already put in and the value that I've already provided. And then the intention, I think, with the coin holder voting is that the community writ large, in as a democratic way as possible, votes on that and then disperses funds from the lockbox. And whenever those votes happen or the ZCG approvals happen, then the multi-sig happens, then the funds get dispersed. That's my loose understanding of how the dynamics of all that work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess it's I've been through the community grants process before things when it was just Zcash Foundation, I guess, and so I kind
Yeah.
of like half of it makes sense to me. The other half is like new, but it seems like a good move in that direction. The random thought, which is some of these are probably better for maybe private conversations, but at the same time, I like the public workshopping kind of thing of this. There's a
Let's give it a shot.
there's an app called Multisig, like multisig with a V. I don't know if anyone, some people listening will have heard of it, and it's run by it's kind of created by like the Thorchain founder that basically uses threshold signatures instead to combine signatures to create a single key rather than a multi-sig. And so basically what that does in addition to they use it a lot for treasury management especially. And one interesting advantage over multi-sig from my understanding, again, I'm not nearly technical enough to be super good on this, but my understanding is if you wanted to add or remove parties to these kinds of things, you could do so without completely reformulating the vault.
Right.
So
Yeah.
where you have, let's just say you have a fourth organization that comes in, like, Mertz Proof of Work Maximalism Collective or whatever. Again,
Sure.
I'm being funny there clearly, but let's just
Oh,
say,
the more the merrier. Let's.
and
Yeah.
then you want to turn it to like a 3 out of 4 to kind of release
Yeah.
funds, and then you could just add that party without completely making a new lockbox, right? So,
Right.
I mean, of course, you would stuff to get a new lockbox just to transition to this kind of thing, but it would be interesting to be able to manage adding and removing, or adding like an automated signer for thresholds. Like for small grants, you only need 2 signatures, but for big ones, you could need 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, just some random brainstorming that popped into my mind. As
No,
was
I like
thinking
that.
about
I like that. There's I think the proposed move is to move towards Frost, which is the Zcash Foundation. They do some really good research and development there, and they basically have this multi-sig schema called Frost that may have that property. But I think right now it's just a regular ass multi-sig. But the next proposed move is to move to this Frost algorithm that will provide some new features and benefits. And
Yeah, it's probably
I
comparable, if I were to guess, right?
yeah, I think so. But I like that, and I like I'm a big fan of democratization of things. So like in my perfect world, and I know this is not technically feasible, but in a perfect world, I would have a third vote, which would be one person, one vote. Regardless of how many coins you have, and I would be looking for consensus among basically both votes, or I would be studying the differences in how both groups vote. But like, there's nothing stopping somebody from just putting like a million SEC in a million different wallets and voting with all of those, and just having, you know what I mean? And without doing KYC or without something gnarly that you'd have to do with that just violates the whole thing. So I think we sort of, like many things in Zcash and like many things in crypto and like many things in tech, it's a trade-off space that you have to navigate between these things. And I think the current governance model is a pretty good, pretty good spot on the trade-off map, So
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that I think is that's one of those holy grails of crypto, is how do you do one person, one vote in a completely decentralized way that doesn't violate anyone's privacy, that can't be gamed. And that's the thing that's like, I think it's doable. I don't think it's doable today, but just theoretically thinking, like, I wonder if you could do like a open source sort of DNA sampler that you could upload DNA in fully zero knowledge way, and then you could just, for each vote, you would just say, well, we don't know which DNA sequence or which that this is. We don't know that it is, but we just know it's not the same as the other one. And
it's
then
a DNA nullifier set.
Yeah, the DNA nullifier voting. And I just, because I just kind of thought of it just now, I have not gone through the mental experimentation as far as how could that go horribly wrong. Like, are you going to have people like, stealing vials of blood to like game votes and stuff like that? Is like a blood bank going to be rated? Like, I don't know. Like,
I have all these chickens in my backyard, and I'm going to submit their blood for each thing or something, or it has to be human blood.
yeah, or how is there any modification that you could do? Like, how do you Sybil attack? Do you just can you
Yeah.
modify synthetic blood to like pretend like you're people and just like make a? It'd be
Mhm.
very fun, also good in like a sci-fi novel, I'm sure, is to like, But in the
Yeah.
meantime, like one coin, one vote is kind of as close as we got, other than one CPU, one vote, or what I. This is another idea is like proof of lifetime transaction fee spent, where
Mhm.
if you could somehow,
Mhm.
again, the privacy of this starts to get weird if you don't have a ZK system, for example. But if it's like if I could prove without exposing my lifetime transaction history that I'd spent like let's say 4 ZEC in like lifetime transaction fees, like I'm clearly one of the biggest customers of the network during this time frame,
Mhm.
then I have an amplified vote, for example. Whereas someone who just buys a bag and just doesn't use it doesn't get as much. There's some stuff you could do there too. That could be fun. But again,
I like
this is
that. Yeah.
this is stuff for you guys to think up over the next decade or so.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, it's similar. Everybody always talks about proof of shielding time. Like how long have you held your coins in the shielded pool, and incentivizing that somehow, rewarding people from keeping it in a long time,
Mm-hmm.
which is we'll get into some of that because that ties into sort of the staking design and things like that. But like
Mm-hmm.
the problem with that is it doesn't secure anything. It doesn't add any benefit
Mm-hmm.
to the network by
Yeah.
just paying people from issuance. And we're not minting new coins, which is one of our main like strong principles in the Zcash community is the 21 million supply cap. It would be extremely, almost unanimous if anybody suggested changing that. So like, if you're paying any sort of rewards, they have to be paid out of the block reward or
Mm-hmm.
else.
Yeah, it's
So
just like another random thought is like imagine if every time you spent a transaction or something like that, or if under a certain amount of time you would receive some kind of like a shielded asset that would be like a governance token, and then
that might be,
those if those accrue, let's just say every year that you hold you get a new one or something like that, then you could vote with more voting power because you have these tokens. Or if
right.
every time you spend, then for every ZEC that you spend, you get one of the proof of spend token. It's also shielded and stuff. You could use that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's some interesting games we could play with this.
Yeah. ZSAs do open up a lot of interesting properties that we wouldn't be able to have before. Um, but yeah, maybe we should talk about some of the projects that we
Yeah.
have Shielded Labs
Well,
because we're
so
touching on
there's
them now, and we should
just the last thing before that we talked about community donation funding.
yeah.
And this is something that's interesting to me in particular because I do run some community funded projects in the Dash ecosystem. And also, my day job before crypto was as a nonprofit fundraiser. So I've done a lot of like asking people for money and for these kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I'm just interested in how, like, first of all, like, is it something where you just like threw up an address somewhere and then shielded funds came in? Is it somewhere where you have like actual donor relations where you know who these people are and you talk to them? And like how, like generally how, whatever you want to share, I guess, how is Shielded Labs funded more than donations?
Yeah, it's more the latter. I won't get into the
Mm-hmm.
specifics of the
Of course.
people because I want to respect their privacy.
Of course.
I think it's been said on some other podcasts or some articles or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's generally reaching out to pretty big people and
Mm-hmm.
explaining our mission and explaining what we want to do and getting them to basically buy a bunch of Zach and then give it to us. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Interesting.
don't think Jason, aka a quiet investor, Jason McGee,
Mm-hmm.
is the executive director, and his main job is him and Zuko do a lot of donor management, donor relations stuff. Luckily, not my problem.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
so there's no public donation address, but you can contact if you want it. I'm just looking at the site. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's more like that. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's sort of more like a traditional nonprofit, even though it's there's a lot of nuance to that.
yeah, exactly. Because I think in some cases, or maybe in most cases, you kind of want to know where donors
Hmm.
sometimes have demands, and they have
Yeah,
expectations. And I
call
think
that
it's
donor intent in the industry.
donor intent. In managing donor intent is easier if you can talk to
Of
them.
course.
So we want to kind of know KYD, know our donors a little bit.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. And
yeah,
one thing that's kind of interesting on that, let's see the. I guess I won't mess with trying to throw it up on the screen, but Bitcoin Cash has something called a Flip Starter, which is a basically a crowd fund that under a certain time frame, there's a certain funding window, and if the goal is not met at that point, everyone's funds get refunded, so you don't
yeah,
end up kind of having that. And that's, as far as I understand, something similar to that is how they funded most projects in the space. Monero has like a community crowdfunding thing where there
yeah.
are certain line items that get donations up to like the certain point and stuff. And so that kind of stuff is also cool to me. That might be fun to see if like in at some point. I don't know if it's like a part of community grants or if it's part of Shielded Labs or something new entirely, where people would have this like list of other cool things that no one's working on, and then just
Yeah.
be like, you want to the way you get that ticker to 100% if you want this feature kind of thing.
I would love to see stuff like that. In general, I call to your audience to build stuff on Zcash. I love seeing
Mm,
like, one good thing I will say about the Monero community is that they have a lot of cool sites like the Monero Marketplace and things like that. And I would love to see more of that. There are
mm-hmm.
Zcash marketplaces. There's one called crowdstore.net. I think that just opened up. So yeah, we're starting to see people sort of like a magnet get pulled into the ecosystem and want to build stuff with Zcash and using Zach and accepting Zach. Um, but I think we need more of it. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, without further delay, let's just get into all the stuff you're working on. So, first
Okay.
of all, do you want to just outline, is there a scope of what Shielded Labs will ever kind of deal with? Is it like, this is our lane, we're going to focus just on this? Or is it just, we're going to focus on anything cool for Zcash that is maybe not being handled by other people? And then these are our shorter term priorities, like the
Yeah.
mission.
Right. No specific mission. There's kind of what we organically have ended up doing,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't want to limit ourselves because there's things change, and I think the ecosystem changes and things like that over time. So we want to be able to be flexible around that. But it is sort of a stealthy. Mert described us as like a special operation or something like that. And I was like, cool. Thanks, Mert. That makes us sound super cool. We're
Mm-hmm.
like, kind of a idea lab or just things that uh proposals and ideas that aren't being talked about. The three main things right now that we're working on are
Mm-hmm.
something called the network sustainability mechanism,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is kind of answers the question, what happens after the 21 millionth coin is mined. So, for
Mm-hmm.
those who are new to Zcash in the audience, Zcash is a proof of work system like Bitcoin. It originally was a Bitcoin fork. It's diverged in several important ways since then, but generally speaking, we have miners who hash as hard as they can
Mm-hmm.
and produce blocks. And that system has two main problems. One is that um, issue as issuance goes down after every halving, if the price action does not match that,
Mm-hmm.
then you have a mining security problem. Um,
Yeah.
it's mitigated in one way because it's ASIC mined and not
Mm-hmm.
GPU mined, so there is a hardware supply. And obviously, people can make new ASICs, but right now, last I checked, it's not the easiest thing in the world to just go online and buy whatever, like a bit miner system and spin it up. So,
Yeah, of
there's
course.
some friction there. And the other problem is that proof of work systems rely on probabilistic finality
Mm-hmm.
instead of assured finality like proof of stake systems have. So even though, you know, 10, 20, 30 blocks down, you have confirmations, there's still a non-zero chance that there could be a longer chain out there somewhere that once it gets gossiped causes a reorg. And
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And again, luckily that's if you like, you could do the cubic attack and do a one-time reorg and spend a ton of money and do that. But to really take over a whole network, you need a sustained 51%
Mm-hmm.
attack too. So there's some benefits there, um, and again, it's less reliant on, but still sensitive to price action there as well.
Yeah. Something I
So
should kind of point out in all this as well is, first of all, the price needing to double every halving kind of thing is to maintain the same level of, I would say, absolute security, or at least absolute security budget. But relative security budget goes down. So as in you're paying this much to secure a network valued that. And now if the every time the halving hits, even if the price doubles, it's the same amount of security paying for twice as valuable of a network at that point, or the opposite, right? The same value network with half the security budget. And so, yeah, kind of like over a long period of time, if you don't have fee revenue sort of take over, you have
yeah,
like less and less and less money securing more and more and more value.
yeah. Because if you're measuring it just in the native token,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. So right. So it's a proven system in terms of Bitcoin. I would
Mm-hmm.
I would argue. I'm sensitive to those that level of pushback where it's like, well, Bitcoin secures $2 trillion, but what happens 50 years from now, or even 20 years from now, 10 years from now? What does that start to look like when, like, the
Mm-hmm.
significant hardware and electricity investment? I mean, look at some of these Bitcoin mining centers. They're like little mini
Mm-hmm.
campuses that they have, these big data centers, or heating buildings in Iceland, or the Chinese miners, or whatever. You know, they have to keep those up, and they have to maintain all that.
Mm-hmm.
If, and that's it's not nothing. I'm not trying to make the environmental argument necessary. I'm just looking at the raw numbers and the hardware
Mm-hmm.
investment these people have in these things. So it's worth looking at how to secure a system like this. Whether or
Yes.
not we can agree on how to secure it, or what the trade-off cost benefits are, or what
Mm-hmm.
an acceptable trade-off is, I think we can have a healthy debate around that. But we should be trying to figure out how to make these sustainable. So the network sustainability mechanism is something that I think we have pretty broad consensus in the community that it's a good idea. And what it is it essentially recycles tokens back into issuance
Mm-hmm.
via a few ways. So there's three main zips that are being proposed. Zip is like a
Mm-hmm.
Zcash improvement protocol, like a Bitcoin BIP. One just adds a transaction field that allows a transaction to return coins to issuance.
Yeah.
We
Pay
we,
it
we called
forward.
we called it burning, but people didn't like burning because it sounds like too much like sending funds to a zero address or losing your keys or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. It sounds like 21 million is up for grab. It
yeah,
squishes up
yeah,
the idea of 21 million, sort of.
yeah, and memes and ideas and
Mm-hmm.
misspeaking. They're very sticky in crypto, so we want to make sure we're talking about. It's more like a tip, and it's more like you said, like paying a tip forward to the future of the network.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step is just allowing wallets to add a little field that says how much would you like to contribute, and you'd have your standard like 15, 25, 50% of whatever transaction it is, there you just send ZEC to the NSM, and
Mm-hmm.
it gets put back there. and it gets returned to issuance. And then when the miners come back, they have enough for the block reward for the next block.
Yeah. So what's the distribution mechanism for that? Is it like over like the money in that? Like over what time frame does it get distributed?
Well, we get distributed at the same. Oh, okay. So that's a
Yeah.
great question. That's the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the next step of the NSM is we actually smooth out the issuance curve.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about what a graph would look like of a halving curve, it's
Yes.
straight, then it drops, then it's straight, then it drops. We're going to make that a smooth curve. And we figured out like, 0.14275, blah, 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 blah. So this like magic fractional number, or this
Mm-hmm.
long decimal floating point number that basically says every block just reduce issuance by that much. And
Mm-hmm.
then whatever gets added to the NSM will bump the curve back up, and then it will slowly drip back down. So it's this very smooth curve now.
Mm-hmm.
And every block is basically is determined by how many coins are available to issue. You issue a certain small percent of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it dynamic with funds going back into the NSM as well.
Yeah. And I should point out that it's a really cool mechanism, and it's something that there's a lot of precedents for this, right? So a good friend of mine, a crypto researcher for Cyber Capital, Justin Bonds, he is a huge fan of the, I guess, like Ethereum and Solana style mint burn mechanism, where you have a permanent tail emission, but you also have some fees that get burned by transaction fees, so that you could have the ultrasound money meme, right? The deflationary kind of effect. And the idea behind that is that sort of long-term economic security from short-term contributions. And in the same way, part of Dash's fee mechanism works the same way, where when you write things to decentralized storage, that the storage fee is put in like a 50-year like lockbox sort of that drips out. And if you delete the data, you can get a refund partially. But the point is it just kind of like comes out over a long period of time. So it's the same thing. It's like, this NSM. It's like you pay into an NSM that kind of comes out over time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like parallels across the crypto space in this. Which I guess that's validation that you guys are on the right track at least.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, our goal is to never increase the 21 million supply cap. So we want to get this in Network Upgrade 7 if we can. It's slated for release Network Upgrade 7. We have pull requests that are about to be merged into the code, and things are moving much, much further along in the governance process than our other projects right now. Yeah. And we want to get it in so that we can look at the data in the best way we can, because shielded transactions and all. But we want to be able to see at least how it affects the supply cap and the we want to see how it affects the circulation and the issuance over a long period of time, so we can maybe adjust it if we need to.
Yeah. So, and I apologize if you already said this and my brain glossed over. Typically, what would end up contributing to the NSM? Would it be like a protocol level part of transaction fees automatically? Is it kind of a manual thing where like some wallets can decide they want to donate to some other people?
So I said there were three components to it. Yes. One is the voluntary manual fee that you can pay in. Two is the smoothing of the issuance curve so that it can respond to the supply and the circulation supply. Third is 60% of transaction fees automatically protocol level gets into the NSM.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's
cool.
And transaction fees right now are just this sort of, it's called ZIP 317, and they're just fixed based on generally an abstraction called actions, which is like, this many bytes in a transparent transaction, this many orchard actions if you're doing shielded. If you have sapling and sprout, you have those. But it's just 10,000 Zats per action right now. So it's not a ton, so if it's high volume, I think the miners will, notice, but they're not going to feel it necessarily compared to the block reward at this point, at this price level. It's so much dependent on where the price is in terms of all this stuff that It's
Mm-hmm.
when the price is low, sentiment is high. When the price is high, sentiment is low for some of these ideas. So it's a lot. It's a literal roller coaster of things.
That is
NSM
always pretty
though,
funny.
yeah. NSM's the easy one because I think there is general consensus in the community that it's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what's next after NSM?
Okay, so the next one after NSM is Crosslink.
Mm-hmm.
Crosslink is a proposal for a finality gadget that kind of runs alongside the proof of work chain and runs a BFT, a Byzantine fault tolerant, aka a proof of stake network, but with some really, really important caveats and nuances.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially speaking, what it is that the two chains will run parallel. The BFT chain will vote on which blocks it wants to finalize, and then the proof of work chain will basically respect that vote
Mm-hmm.
and give us assured finality and consistent finality so that exchanges and wallets and anything else can basically rely on that instead of this probabilistic finality, which is generally just based on your risk profile as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Coinbase and Kraken and whatever, any other exchange or near intents or whatever, basically just decides, 30 confirmations is good. Let's just
Mm-hmm.
go with that. So this will give you the assured finality that you need.
And is the assured finality typically after how many confirmations? Just like the first one, then that, or
No,
do
no,
you?
no. In the current design, it's like 10 blocks or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. The important thing in the first iteration is that it would be consistent and respected by the application developers and the exchanges. And from there, you would move to improve finality.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are ways, as people have pointed out, where you could now improve finality by just tweaking the proof of work parameters, but it's unclear how that would affect the the security of the network by just speeding things up or whatever. Because
Yeah.
is 60 blocks at double speed more or less secure than 30 blocks at the normal speed? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard to say, and you could do these calculations like, well, I would need to buy this much hardware to attack this, or I would need to, whatever. But it's I think it's still kind of a little bit more up in the air and a little less tidy than people
Yeah, for
want
sure.
it out to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is an intensely complex subject if you really get down into it.
Yes.
But it definitely, as far as like from what I understand, again, people who are way smarter than me can correct me, but I would assume that the point in reducing the block confirmation time as small as possible would be to get that basic bit of security kind of clocked in as soon as you can. Not that like for massive transfers it would be super secure after one block, because it's like how long of a reorg do you want to kind of account for.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily help that, but it's like if I'm going to buy lunch here. It's going to be like, me and a couple other people. It's like $48 worth. I send a transaction. It's just like, well, if you get a confirmation in like a minute or something like that, or even like 12 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever the Ethereum had during the proof of work age or whatever, then it's
Yeah.
just like within 15 seconds, the odds that gets reversed are super low for the whatever. And it just that it under a say a Bitcoin style 10 block interval, 10-minute block interval, you'd have to wait
Yeah.
10 minutes
And
for
it's to buy a
and
burrito.
and that would
Yeah.
be at that point it would be just as secure as a 15-second block time after 10 minutes. But the point is just to get to any period of semi finality, it would just take way longer. So that's
Yes.
kind of where that would help. It wouldn't make you get to security faster past that first like goalpost, right? That first time thing of like just some confirmation.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And Crosslink is highly experimental, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
something that's going to get moved into the protocol really anytime soon. Like, I want to make sure that we're clear on even just how network upgrades work in general in Zcash. It's a very long and drawn out process because there's now billions and billions of dollars at stake. And not just now in terms of its market cap, but assuming that even just the crypto industry in general grows the way it has been, there's future money at stake too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's intense code review, there's debate and scrutiny, and there's also security audits that need to happen. There's a long-standing test net that needs to run so we can run scenarios on and red team it. This is not something that we take lightly, and
Mm-hmm.
not something that we're just rushing to get out. I want to make that perfectly clear.
Yeah.
So our intention is basically to finish our proof of concept of this, and then just let it run and let people, play with it. We have a test net set up that uses the TAS test net token,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll be just trying it out and seeing how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's
Just that's to address the FUD of Zcash is moving to proof of stake. Zcash has no
Mm-hmm.
intention of moving to proof of stake at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean it's probably one of the more complex subjects in crypto with so many different
Yeah.
kind of things. I do want to address a comment we had in the live chat from the Capers 83. He said, personally, I would prefer implementing a hybrid, meaning hybrid proof of work, proof of stake, with Avalanche, like eCash has done, instead of Crosslink. So I don't know how much you know about Avalanche. I'm sure you know that it has a blockchain that's named after it, of course. But
Yes.
basically, from my understanding, like a bunch of nodes come to consensus in a quick kind of thing. Like one node says, "Is this transaction valid?" And then if yes, then ask the next node, "Does this?" And after the more you get, the harder it is for nodes to override that. And this all happens over the course of like a second, basically. And so
Right.
and so then what eCash does, which is the Bitcoin Cash fork, has an Avalanche post consensus, which makes every block irreversible, I guess, and is very soon implementing an Avalanche pre consensus in a few weeks, I guess. That's what I've heard, which means basically within a second or so they could come up with a relative like deterministic finality that even though it has to then still be included in a block, it cannot not be included in a block at that point. This is a lot of this is assumption, because Dash has a similar system where the master nodes come together and lock in every transaction deterministically after 1 or so seconds, and kind of does
Cool.
that. And so, it's like the staked finality layer idea has a lot of play in crypto. I would say not nearly enough, because there's a lot that aren't really looking at something like this. Have you thought of any way of adding a a purely hash rate based kind of finality layer, which it gets a lot trickier, but basically find a more deterministic finality through without introducing any staked element? I don't know if there's been any thoughts on that, or admittedly, this is trickier to do to just not hybridize the system.
Yeah. I think anything that would be there would be highly theoretical. Like there might be some archive paper about it or something like that, but I don't see anything that's been implemented yet. I don't want to say it's impossible, because nothing's impossible. But the first thing that comes to mind, though, is the Ghost DAG protocol, which is something we've been seeing.
That's like Caspa, right?
Yep, that's Caspa, and that essentially uses what they call uncles of blocks. So if two miners create the same block, you have two things. You reward both blocks, and then the next block will point to 2 blocks instead of 1. And then there's a sorting algorithm, much like a CRDT. I don't know if people are familiar with that, a conflict-free replicated data type, which is just something from distributed engineering, not blockchain. It's kind of how you would do sorting and ordering without a blockchain. And then basically you instead of blocks, you have these slots of time. So this slot has 2 blocks in it, and then you have a deterministic sorting algorithm that basically compresses those into a list of transactions that are ordered in a consistent way and make sense. And that's how you could scale, for example, TPS with this. So that's something that we see, but I think you would still need some sort of finality layer on top of even that to get what you're really after. And we need another Sean Bow type person to come in and invent a new thing of how to get finality on this, which Sean Bow, it's awesome. And if you don't know the Tachyon project that he's working on with his team, it's superb.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him on the show too. I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, finality is an interesting thing, and look, just to address the elephant in the room, whatever. I'm sensitive to a lot of the feedback that we've been getting. I think it's really important things to consider, and I think it's one of the main things is the order of operations feedback. I think I thought about that a lot, and again, the price action changes a lot of things. We have a bit more mining security in terms of US dollars. We have less miner centralization now because of this. It's an interesting thing. As the price goes up, it does seem like people are sort of buying more ASICs, or at least just moving their ASICs to point to a different mining pool or something. But we went from I don't know the exact numbers, but it has decreased.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about via BTC's potential, ownership due to their low fees. I think is the main driver of their the centralization there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's interesting with proof of work, like the competitiveness kind of tends to drive to like this. There is, and I should actually find this and link to this because this is a very important thing. So first of all, proof of work versus proof of stake is one of the most time tested as well as emotionally charged arguments in all of crypto.
Yes.
And maybe I'm a dum-dum, but I don't quite get why, no one's romantic about proof of stake. No one is, as far as I know. Some people are really into it and say this is objectively the best thing that they think. Proof of work gets a lot of people emotionally attached to proof of work and romanticizing it. And this is not an attempt to dismiss people who like it. But I do notice that people get very passionate about defending proof of work. And it's just interesting to me. And we've seen this happen with, Zcash, especially, I think, anytime I heard about crosslink or hybridization or proof of stake or anything like that, which, as far as I remember, the first episode of the Zcash podcast I did in it came at the very end of 2022, was with Nathan Wilcox, and I think they were talking about an eventual move to proof of stake for Zcash at the time, and it does not seem to be the case today, right? Now,
we've walked. I mean, if that was ever the case, that's been totally walked back.
And I think it was a discussion. I don't think Shielded Labs existed back then, for example, right? There was none of that. It was very different. And it seemed like that idea didn't have a ton of pushback at the time, maybe. And then it seems like the cross-link idea of a hybrid sort of model also didn't seem to have very much pushback. But this month it has. And I wonder, I'm wondering, first of all, have you noticed this as well, or am I kind of off the mark just because I've been on Twitter too much, and that's just where I see things crop up, and there has been a lot of pushback behind the scenes before?
The public pushback is pretty new, but so is the private pushback. I think let me think about.
This is
I
like
wanna work- I'm going to be very careful about this.
diplomacy right here. Well, let
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
I could be not diplomatic as or just a little bit on what
Oh,
I.
go on. I'm fascinated then.
Well, so I because I don't like again. I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
say I'll of course admit to ignorance ahead of making these ignorant statements, right? Just so you know,
yeah.
if you say that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, it's like you're right. But so on
Uh,
that, I kind of noticed because I'm really fascinated by the social movements in crypto. And I
sure.
have noticed as Zcash has been on this like run up, partially this month with the price, but also in the last year, I've noticed the encrypted Bitcoin narrative becomes super popular. And it's a very powerful narrative and it's very useful in informing people why Zcash. Is in it's like, well, you
Yeah,
clearly the market and you guys clearly value this thing. Now imagine that except private. And that's just like a super great way of illustrating it, right? It's
extremely effective marketing,
yes,
and
and the Bitcoin
yeah,
maximalists are losing it over this too, which is also how I know the effectiveness. It's like how much whenever because I've been doing combat sports for many decades, and whenever you do a specific move, you can tell how dangerous it is by your opponent's reaction. So if you
yeah.
feint a head kick and you're like, oh,
Uh,
okay, okay, I'm
they don't
gonna
like
I'm,
head
I'm gonna
kicks.
bank
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah. It's so this is
Well,
one of those things,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I have a feeling that encrypted Bitcoin narrative, the stronger it got, the more people wanted Zcash to be like an encrypted Bitcoin and not deviate, sort of.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an incredible product market fit. Just an encrypted store of value that has all the same properties as something you're already familiar with. I'm
Hmm.
again really sensitive to this sort of thing, and I think,
Of course.
yeah, and I do think the crosslink narrative does collide with that,
Hmm.
um, because it's not proof of work. It doesn't look like a maxi thing,
Hmm.
and um, and like, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Go on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's sort of like the thing with that where I just think that people I think that the idea of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin proved a concept really well, and or at least part of the concept. I hoped it would prove peer-to-peer digital cash well, and then
Mhm.
peer-to-peer digital gold ended up being what it did. But I I understand being like, well, let's build on that. Let's take that and take it to the next level rather than let's fix everything. But also the funny thing about like the security thing and the price narrative, people don't for people should remember the price was like 40 or like less like a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
And
right.
it could go back. I don't think it will, but it could go back there. And this sort of reminds me of like the earlier, like the 2017 heyday or 2018 heyday of like the Dash DAO, where everyone was like, oh, just have the DAO fund it, everything.
Yeah,
And then when the money starts to run thin, now it's just like, oh, how can we do things for free? How can we get volunteers? How can we get donations for side
right.
projects? What we should have been doing all along, but it's like, man, we got tons of money. We don't need to worry about that. So
Well, yeah,
I would my personal opinion, and this isn't a pro POS POW at all. It's just generally I think things should be engineered to last, like engineered right from the start, whatever that might look like.
yeah, yeah. And luckily, Zcash is something that did have, privacy is the North Star, right?
Hmm.
And that was, if you watch Sean Bowe's talk from Token 2049, it's like we started with privacy as the main priority. And
Hmm.
it took 10 minutes to make a shielded transaction and it did all this stuff, but it was private. And then
I've
the,
witnessed these myself, by the way, for a
yeah,
real a point of sale purchase with a Sprout shielded
oh my
transaction on
God.
command line, and
Yeah,
you might know who did it, but I'll just keep that one
yeah, yeah,
quiet.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, and but the thing is that Bitcoin still has those two really big problems of
Hmm.
the issuance and finality. And I think due to the arsenal of miners that exist in the world, finality may or may not be. I think there's a debate to be had about how important finality really is. But I think it is if you want to start to iterate towards more speed. If you want to get assured transactions in however many seconds, right? You need to know that it's not going to get rolled back. We can't have a system that does that, you know. Um, but the issuance thing is a more pressing thing, which is I think why the NSM has, you know, a lot more support, a lot less controversial of a thing than Crosslink. And yeah, so that's Crosslink basically. It has I think of it as a finality gadget that has the side effect of adding staking to the
Yes.
system. And it's, you know, you need the staking to secure the proof of stake network, obviously. But in our design, we don't have any transactions on the proof of stake chain. There's no economic activity that happens there. Even the staking and delegation transactions are all on the proof of work chain, right alongside all the other shielded transactions. They're, you know, they are private, and they're you know, no notes are ever unshielded or anything like that. There's this idea that it is a compromise on privacy. I don't agree with that one. I think it, you know, we need to be able to audit the finalizer weights publicly, but there's ways of doing that that don't compromise privacy.
Now, are there ways of doing the actual like staking rewards? Does that complicate the privacy situation at all? I know that that's been like private stake has been an issue that a lot of cryptocurrencies have sort of grappled with for a while, and at least in the earlier days.
Yeah.
And I know that, for example, Xano, I'm pretty close to the Xano team. It's a hybrid model that uses CryptoNote, and as far as I'm aware, they've been able to solve for that and have private staking rewards. So, is it a problem at all? Do you know?
No, not the rewards, because we already have shielded Coinbase transactions. So the block rewards themselves go right into Orchard, right into the shielded pool. So like that's fun because I get to address a common Zcash FUD, which is we're not private by default. Well, I don't know how much more by default you want to get if the coins originate in the shielded pool, and you know, if you use a modern wallet, never leave the shielded pool until you withdraw it or until you know, swap it or something like that.
Yeah, and that, by the way, I did write an article for, I don't know if you see in the back here, the privacy edition of
Is that Bitcoin Takeover? Yes.
So I have an article in this version, but I just finished an article for the next version that talks exactly about this private by default myth, that talks about awesome. That kind of stuff. So I think that you'll find a lot of the same sort of argument type things. Just as a random question on that, do you know if, first of all, that the shielded Coinbase rewards are the bigger contributor to the shielded pool going up, or is it Zashi? First, what do you think, if you were able to guess?
I think it's Zashi. I think Josh and the ECC team have done an incredible job, both in terms of designing that application. I mean, it's some of the best UX in crypto as well. Like it's just really, really nice wallet, regardless of what ticker it uses or whatever. But also their advocacy and, you know, just the work that they're doing to sort of popularize this and like encourage people to shield. Like, you know, the wallet yells at you if you have a transparent balance and it tells you to shield it. Like a lot of stuff like that. And then finally, I think near intents, that was a really big kind of 0 to 1 moment. And when you sort of realize what you can do with Zashi and near intents, it's like, whoa, hold on. I should point out that, you know, somebody did do a security analysis of Zashi, and I think there's issues that they need to fix. But to be able to hold a store of value in your encrypted Bitcoin, if you will, and then swap that to just an Ethereum address and have that be the only trace of those funds until they hit Ethereum, and you do whatever you want with it from there, and then have it come in reverse too, so you can send somebody an Ethereum address and then just get ZEC in your wallet, is wild. And it's like sort of the sort of thing like when GPS was invented and we were all like, how did we do this before? Like, why doesn't every wallet just have this in it, regardless of what ecosystem it is? Like, we should just be able to do this with our favorite thing. And then it solves this sort of real world use case where like you could go into a store and they're like, I only accept Tron, and you're like, fine, whatever,
Yeah.
or
But you still get the benefits from not being a Tron person.
exactly, and all the ways that it is, no, but yeah, you get the benefit of just being able to hold your shielded wealth,
Mm-hmm.
sovereign. It's like a little Swiss bank account in your pocket, and you go around and do stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's awesome.
That's another narrative taken from like the Bitcoin world type thing that I'm sure they'll get salty about.
Right. Well, that was never true for them.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Well,
but
there we go.
yeah. Well, the Bitcoin maxis, I'm happy to talk about them. I mean, it's a sort of a thing. Like part of the reason why I'm trying to be very, diplomatic about this and be sensitive to other people's concerns here is because I don't want this to turn into an infighting thing like we see in Bitcoin. I mean, they're so mired down. One of the people I worked with at Equilibrium, not the Equilibrium like blockchain company, but the Finnish blockchain consultancy called Equilibrium Labs, and Eiger is another development company. I worked with this guy Vesavile Pironen, who's a genius, and he came up with this idea.
Name.
Yes. He came up with the idea of reverse Conway's law. So the idea is that like the software always ends up looking like, in Conway's law, the software always ends up looking like what the organizations look like. And we kind of see this with historically with the Zcash community, where like ECC has Zcash D, and the Zcash Foundation has Zebra, and there's 2 nodes, and each one of them maintains that, and it looks like the organizations, or it looks like the social structure. Well, reverse Conway's law is like sometimes the organizations look like the software, and in Bitcoin's case, you have this very ossified, mired down, digging your heels in kind of culture, which is great, and has succeeded for them in a lot of ways, but it kind of looks a little embarrassing publicly, and I do think that it stagnates some of the necessary development that they probably should be doing, and it's not, in my opinion, about what data you can stuff in opcode or not. I think they should be doing other things, and I'm not well versed enough for Bitcoin to tell you what I think they should be working on specifically, but you can just tell it's not that. So,
yeah, there's this ossification narrative as well, which I have to say I kind of personally reject the idea that tech needs to be ossified and not change at any point, because you always need to change. But generally speaking, the bigger things are, the harder they are to move. That part is true. And I think a lot of changes are like the worst thing to happen to Bitcoin is it became successful, because a lot of these changes that were needed to do to make it actually work just never happened, because they kept on being rewarded for not making those decisions by being rich, money coming in no matter what you do. So it's like the Bitcoin way must be the right way. And I think this kind of comes back around to people's concepts of don't make Zcash much different from Bitcoin, because clearly Bitcoin did it right. It's like the correlation does not necessarily imply causation. And so that's one reason I think it's really important to, I guess, set the foundations great while you're still more nimble. And then when you have more people pouring into the ecosystem, more money, people start to get really conservative, and there becomes a lot more like fighting over changes and things like that. And then once you hit kind of escape velocity, it's more like you should just focus on making sure this thing works and gets more people using it. And it's harder to make those big, changes. Like when people say with like Ethereum moving to proof of stake, which I guess fortunately for them, it was sort of the idea since almost the inception to eventually do this. But they were, I think Dima Buterin, Vitalik's dad, described it to be as it's like switching an engine for a jet plane mid-flight, where you got a turboprop thing, you're just switching it out for a jet engine while you're in the air. It's a lot easier to do that stuff on the ground, let me say.
Right. There's brings us back to our whole network upgrade process, which there's a whole zip that outlines like everything that needs to happen step by step. And Dyra Emma Hopwood is along with Strat are both really good at writing specs. So it's a very detailed, intricate procedure of how to change things mid-flight. And like with any of these network upgrades, it's crazy to think that like it all comes down to just this one block height. And when you hit that block height, you are no longer in network upgrade 6, you're in network upgrade 7, and all the every node out there needs to be, or like the majority of the nodes out there need to be running this software by that point. There's a great episode of our Shielded Dialogues podcast. I don't know if people are familiar with that. We don't get a ton of views. We don't get as many views as you.
No, I don't get as many views as me.
Right. That's yeah. That tells you how many we get. But Josh Swihart is on there talking about just how governance works in Zcash. And there's a lot of people that are just even randos on Twitter or whatever are just like, hey, you should do this. This should be the thing you launch. And it's like, okay, that's going to take, I don't know, 18 months for it to get through just the soft, skills part of this whole thing. There's like diplomacy and consensus building and politicking that you need to do. I think in a healthy network, there should be debate and disagreement and things like that. But I think with the goal being that everybody wants the same thing, everybody's heart is in the right place. We all want Zcash to succeed, and we all want to live in a world where Zcash is successful and all that carries with it in terms of privacy and freedom and unstoppable private money and encrypted Bitcoin or whatever you want to call it. We want this thing to go up and to the right, both in price, but also in adoption and in acceptance into the mainstream. I think crypto's sentiment is just dog shit right now in the real world. So Zcash could be something that helps people get their head around using it in a normal context. So again, how we get there is up for debate, but I think we're all on the same train heading in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of interesting to see, like, I don't know, crypto has been, it's what, 12 or 13 years I've been in this space. I've never felt like I've learned half of what there is to know about crypto in the space. Like, I don't feel there's still more of the space that I'm unfamiliar with every passing year. And one thing for sure is it's interesting where consensus forms, because everyone loves this concept of consensus, but you find out some of the more successful projects are also some of the less innovative, maybe because they're already kind of there. And then the further down, maybe not all the way down to the bottom, but the further, when you get to like that middle pack, like 50, rank 30 minus CoinMarketCap, let's just say, which is a terrible metric, by the way. But like, just say like when you start getting out of that top 10, 20 kind of thing, then all of a sudden you start to see a lot more consensus on certain features or attributes. Like it helps to have an actual prescribed governance mechanism. It helps to have some kind of programmability in a lot of ways. It helps to have privacy. It helps to have, a hybrid model or some kind of a staked finality layer or purely proof of stake finality layer. Although there are a few like Quai and Caspa that are kind of innovating on purely the proof of work front.
Yeah.
But so like it's not like 100%, but you find a lot of like rhyming in projects around, because it kind of at that level, it feels like you do have to compete in the genuine marketplace, whereas higher, you kind of don't think you need to compete as much, and therefore you don't.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell whether that's a fallacy or not, right? It's hard to tell whether, it's working fine, don't touch it, which as an engineer, I totally respect that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing.
Who touched this thermostat,
Yeah, totally. And there is some superstition there as well, right? It's like, okay, the price is going up, so don't mess with anything. But that's a really interesting point, though, that if you're like a mid curve coin, you're like, what can we do to get some attention, and what can we do to do some things, which explains why I think Crosslink was very popular, 6 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and now is controversial now because, um, the mentality of a community who has held on for
Mm-hmm.
7 years of down only and is now experiencing this sort of victory lap rally is
Yeah.
hard to predict and hard to know what people are going to want or not want. And there's people who are saying more dev, more features, more stuff, and there's people that are saying no, just keep it the way it is and move all that stuff to an L2 or whatever. And I see both sides. I totally understand
Mm-hmm.
where people are coming
Yeah.
from. I think Crosslink is cool, and I think there will come a need for something like it, if not
Mm-hmm.
for Crosslink itself. And that's obviously where I'm coming from. I think it's an awesome idea, an awesome project. But I see where the detractors are coming from. I really do in terms of Crosslink. If somebody was arguing with the NSM for me, or our third project, which is even more in the weeds, or like Stealth, which is a dynamic fee market,
Mm-hmm.
like an EIP 1559, which I could see being controversial as well. But I think that will be a little more popular as well too. So it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll have a range of things
Yeah.
that people like and things that people dislike, and that's kind of our thing. It's their experiments, their proposals, their research and development kind of things.
Yeah. And that
The
is one
nature
of
of it.
those things that like builders in the space and leaders in the space have to sort of manage is I kind of feel like the progress of technology innovation is relatively linear,
Mhm.
whereas like every year a little bit more what works, what doesn't. You do a little more research, you build more things. This works, this doesn't, and it's kind of very linear. But then the actual business side, the implementation side, the market side especially, is very abrupt, and things can change on a dime, and it's a really tough task. But I think it's like I think the winners in the space are those who win by balancing this successfully, where they build long term and then just find a way to shoehorn that into whatever the new current thing is, and that they're ready to do that. So, for example, just Zcash's rise back to where it is now is an
Mhm.
interesting thing where, you know, I feel like Josh did a lot of really important things, and of course the whole rest of the
Yeah,
ecosystem early
yeah.
on, and they built things that now are like the meta, and people really are appreciating them right now, like the deck stuff, the usable, elegant wallet that I remember a lot of people muttering under their breath about, like, why is ECC doing a wallet? They're going to waste their time. Like this at Zcon in Barcelona, a lot of people are like very like bearish on the idea
All
of
it.
Zashi.
Yeah,
They're just like, nah, we have a bunch out. Like, what about Zingo? Zingo doesn't work. Like, what are you talking about? There's a lot of that kind of stuff, and now everyone loves Zashi. So
right.
like, and I was
Yeah,
one of the few people who was like kind of 50-50 on that, but I was like 51% towards Zashi. I was like,
yeah,
I get it, but I don't know. It could be a good idea. And everyone I talked to was just like, they're wasting their time. This is ridiculous, kind of thing. And now it's like, again, building for when now everyone needs that thing. And now there you go.
yeah, yeah. It reminds me of something. Who's that British kid that's like a public intellectual on YouTube now?
You got to be a lot more specific than that.
Alex O'Connor or whatever is like a younger
Yeah.
guy who's like doing all the like
Mm-hmm.
interviews with smart people now.
Mm-hmm.
But he had somebody on, and it's this concept of, does democracy work? Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Democracy is being called into question now. And they were talking about this guy who had theories about democracy, whatever. But the interesting thing was, it was some study or some poll that like a company like Pew Research did or something, and they basically said, can you put together a list of questions that somebody, suppose that we have a tier of people who can vote and a tier of people who can't vote.
Mm-hmm.
Can you put together a list of questions that the people who can vote should be able to answer? Like, what's the Fourth Amendment? Who was
Mm-hmm.
president then? Like all these questions about, that you should be an informed voter. And everybody could put together the list of questions, but not everybody that even put together the list of questions knew all the answers to the questions. So it brings this idea of governance into like, like what should you be informed about before you
Yeah.
can make a vote or
That's like a
anything like
rookie move because if I was determining the questions, I'd make sure that if I'm like, they should ask this. Wait, I don't know. Scratch that one. Never mind.
that. Well,
You know?
yeah, right. Yeah, it might have been a blind study or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, um, but yeah, there is an element of like cross examination where it's like, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to if you're going to put something up for a vote or whatever. But that's more politicky than I would like. I think it's just interesting how all this works and what context people bring to their governance decisions.
Yeah, of course.
And for example, I think somebody should know how the network upgrade process works before proposing a network upgrade, or like when the next network upgrade is sort of tentatively scheduled to be, those sort of things, because those are more tried and true governance-y things than not.
For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as like the building thing, like, some people are going to be, I don't know, maybe some people will be triggered by this sort of, opinion, but I kind of feel like my opinion is that Crosslink, what Crosslink seeks to accomplish is going to be absolutely necessary in Zcash's future at some point. And I think that having it ready to go is going to be pretty cool, because even if during the current run up or whatever, people might be like, nah, we don't need it anymore. I think that eventually that will swing around, and people get really upset when you tell them, nah, you'll change your mind or something. So I want to just acknowledge that I'm pissing people off by saying this, but like, there will be a time, maybe it's like a few years down the road, everything seems fine, but then one of the major mining pools is coerced by a government entity to stop including any shielded sends in a block or something like that. Again, technical specifics might be different, but starts doing something majorly as a problem. And then it's like, oh my gosh, we need something. And now everyone agrees that we need something to have that ready to go. Not necessarily like, there's, because the public opinion and what people want goes up and down and up and down. And it's sometimes the builders have to sort of, build the best tech they can at any given time and just see where that sort of factors in.
Yeah. That's what you see with the quantum resilience. I think that's a really interesting point, that there's time and attention being spent to making sure the ZK knowledge circuits are not quantum proof. There's no claim that anything's quantum proof, but quantum resistant to certain things. And even the way that the addresses are constructed, so that you need to know somebody's public key to even start Shor's algorithm or whatever it is really important too. But I don't think that people really appreciate what a true nation state level attack on one of these systems would look like.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't think we've really seen it yet. And when we do, and all these security questions are going to get, dredged up from the bottom again. Because, people talk about this idea of how much would it cost to attack a network? Well, does that even apply to, an organization or an institution that can basically just manufacture 100,000 basics?
Yeah,
and just,
of course.
Like,
or
so,
confiscate, right?
Or confiscate, or just bribe, print money to bribe a mining pool or whatever. So like, these type of things, they're all very theoretical, and I don't want to rock the boat any more than anybody else does, but I think it's something we, again, need to consider, need to think about, and need to carefully construct some sort of insurance against,
Mm-hmm.
Because in a perfect implementation of something like Crosslink, um, you have protections. You have the proof of work layer. If that's compromised, then you have the proof of stake layer to basically finalize a different block
Mm-hmm.
and move on. And you've just prevented a hard fork by just having that system in place.
Yeah.
If the proof of stake system is compromised, then you can just roll back to probabilistic finality on the proof of work system until the
Mm-hmm.
stakers, delegators, and everybody over here can figure it out. And if
Mm-hmm.
both systems are compromised, then you can still hard fork. You can still just, you know, and again, it goes back to maintaining the economic integrity of the ZEC asset
Mm-hmm.
itself. And
Yeah,
that's,
of course.
organically what Shielded Labs has sort of blossomed into is this kind of a watchdog for that sort of thing. Whether or not our ideas are controversial or not, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a certain like lore component to all this that I'm going down a little memory lane. Is like,
Sure.
Bitcoin, of course, itself was never 51% attacked, or any kind of significant element was never, attacked. The only significant thing I would say in my memory of the lifespan of this is when the first big serious China mining ban happened. Like half the hash rate disappeared like overnight. And then blocks started taking hours to come out because the difficulty adjustment algorithm just took so many blocks, like 2016 blocks or something. I don't remember. Again, if
Yeah.
I'm getting this wrong, forgive me. But so I remember people were waiting like days to get transactions through. And it's very possible like half the hash rate just got taken out by a nation state's actions. And I mean, what if China decide the CCP again? A lot of people aren't fans of communism in the West. For example, the Communist Chinese Party decided to start censoring transactions. Like, what would you do? Like, there'd
Yeah.
be a real thing. But to go down the lore thing, I remember, Bitcoin Cash split off, did its own thing. I think really quickly they realized, despite the rhetoric, that they were not going to win a hash war ever or in near future. So they had replay protection, so everything was fine. And when Bitcoin SV, when Craig Wright started his shenanigans, there was a real hash war there, right? Where all of a sudden, Bitcoin SV had more hash rate in the beginning and was going to just force force whatever upgrade was, I can't even remember which one it was. It was controversial. And to kind of like win this active hash war. And then a lot of hash rate showed up from like nowhere. Again, the hash rate spiked for both chains instantly. So people were battling it out over this thing. It was very fun to sort of see. But
Yeah.
this whole like, longest chain, blah, 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 most accumulated proof of work, all this rhetoric on the Bitcoin Cash side ended up being compromised by adding a 10 block rolling checkpoint. So every 10 blocks, like that's as far as a reorg could go, is 10 blocks. And that's still there today. Because despite all this, no, most accumulated, whatever, they're like, well, we're a real threat here. We need to
Yeah.
put a thing in to stop it. And so then that happened. And then, eCash ended up doing their thing, and they have Avalanche, same thing with like Firo. I don't know. Do you know about Firo, by the way? It's worth sort of bringing up.
Wait, is that the one that's on the Zcash?
No,
Or is that
Firo
different?
was known as Zcoin back in the day,
Okay.
if you're getting into like the super lore era.
Yeah.
But Firo was an ASIC mined coin, and then they went ASIC resistant. Like they got rid of ASICs. And not long, I don't know how long after that, but at some point after that, they did suffer an actual 51% attack, which sucked. Now, thankfully for them, they were working on implementing Dash's finality system, chain locks. They just had not implemented it yet by the time the attack hit. But since then, you have like the master, the stake system that basically locks in the first seen block on the network. And so if that were to get compromised, then you just default to regular proof of work. But point is, if you tried to 51% an attack the network, you could not do that because the first seen block on the network would just be permanent, and the secretly mined chain would come in and would just bounce off it and not work.
Yeah.
So Vero got actually attacked, and then now they, because of a decision to move away from ASICs, and now they're secure via this kind of level. Monero had ASICs at one point. It's not super well documented, but it's true, I think. And when they migrated to RandomX, there was like 4 different like chain forks of Monero that split off of that when they changed that, and everything seemed to go okay until Cubic decided to come in and do what they're doing, or what they
Yeah.
did. They've moved on, and they had like 100 and we had like a 19 block reorg at one point, and was like 117 transactions reverse, something like that, at the height of this attack. And now, I have not kept up super closely in the last few weeks, but there's talks of adding a DNS checkpointing system, like for fully centralized, literally a centralized entity checkpoints the blocks, and as like a temporary stopgap method before they figure out a better way of making sure that you don't have 51% attacks. But again, everyone's like, oh, RandomX, everything's great. We get botnets or whoever else can mine. That's the way it should be. One CPU, one vote. And then as soon as you have an attack, things change. And so I'm not dropping FUD here. I'm just saying that what your work is valuable, at least to explore these things and build things that we'll see where the community ends up going. Attitudes could change overnight in some cases, but and that's again another great thing about having a prescribed governance method is whenever it comes time to decide something, you have a way for the community to actually decide it. So you can't say, oh, that was bullshit. You get to be like, well, it happened.
Because it's the playbook, right? The governance playbook is really important because it's a high stress, high adrenaline kind of situation, and you need to be able to just pull out a piece of paper and be like, do this, then do this, then do this, instead of fighting, or it's a high risk of escalation otherwise. Yeah, I didn't know all that about. I need to learn more about all these other tokens and what they've all been through a little bit more, I guess. I think you're right though that look, I like the laissez-faire aspect of Bitcoin and the reverse Conway's thing that come of it, because it is just sort of let the market decide. If Craig Wright wants to do some shenanigans and launch BSV, then fine. If the miners want to move over to that chain, then let them, and it'll sort itself out. And it did. And it has, right? The market has spoken, and Bitcoin is the big daddy coin and trillions of dollars. And for now, until it's not. Yeah, and anything is possible, especially in crypto. I mean, how many black swan events have we seen now? And I feel like the grizzled soldier that with like shell shock at this point. I'm sure you do too. I mean, anything is possible.
Like with a cigarette.
Yeah. Just watching the red, like, man, here we go again. Or another FTX happens, or some shithead does something shitty, and some high IQ moron comes and ruins it for all of us, and then we're back to 2022 vibes, and that would be sad.
Yeah.
Or whenever that was. Yeah.
But so like as a we kind of talked a little bit about this in the pre-show, like before we could hear, but like the Dash life cycle of where it's been on privacy, like obviously built some of the very first privacy features on the blockchain, focused on a lot of other things over the years, and then got hit with like the triple whammy, or the however many whammies you want to say, of like privacy coin delisting season and SEC everyone's scared of season. And I kind of feel like previous people might have messed up the messaging on that, being like choosing to downplay things rather, which gave a, I guess, semblance of weakness to a certain extent, without actually without actually getting any benefits from that, like not getting relisted anywhere, for example. And it was like a year or so ago, I think, maybe last year. I don't remember. I think it was last year. I did a big push to try to edge the community towards a privacy overhaul. And it ended up working, but it was controversial. And a lot of people were saying, like, look, we'll take care of that later, because right now privacy is like, it's like a dead end. Like, people are like, regulators are coming in hot, no one really cares about this stuff, all that kind of stuff. And then internally, what I've noticed in the Dash community, the narrative, the ideas around, like, from some of the same voices who are critical, who I had to fight with, I argued untold days and days in Discord, just like the broke, probably my keys are like worn off from all the typing of a lot of those same voices after just the beginning of the month, especially seeing like the Zcash price bump, but Dash did well as well, and Pivx did well, and all that stuff. Just all of a sudden the attitudes are completely different. People are like, "Hey, how's that upgrade coming along?" And like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
speaking of that privacy thing you were working on, how's that going? And
yes,
because like we were talking about earlier, governments change and laws change and sentiments change. I think the thing I want to say is to kind of echo the things are unpopular until they're not kind of thing, is playing nice with regulators and with legalities and things like that ended up being a good thing for us. And
yes. The thing is, it's like that one was a very, very much of a yes and no thing, where playing nice, like Horizon had privacy features or Zcash as it was known in the beginning. Then Horizon had privacy features on the main chain based on Zcash, of course. And then during the season of delistings, they removed that entirely from like the main chain, and subsequently kept on getting delisted, which was, and as far as I know now, it's now migrated to be a privacy project on the base blockchain. It's not its own thing, or it's migrating. That's what I heard the founder say.
Yeah.
But so the point is, like, that was like a kind of like a capitulate. I'm
capitulation.
I'm being unfair for the sake of brevity, but sort of like a capitulation that didn't work. One could argue that the mushy messaging from some people in Dash leadership was also a capitulation that didn't work. But you could also argue, from Firo's standpoint, when Firo came up with the idea of a the text address, right? The exchange only addresses, that it didn't work for them because they got kicked off of Binance anyway, but probably for being a small fish. Whereas Zcash came really close to that. And I remember the whole monitoring tag. I remember the whole uproar. And I think it's just because Zcash had a lot of high profile fans that it managed to just sort of avoid the heat from that. But still, like, that could have gone either way really quick. And
yeah.
No,
you're right. You're right. It still remains to be seen. I don't believe any of the FUD about there's a back door or any of that crap. I mean, you can look, you can see for yourself, or have a very smart coding person to come and explain it to you. And it's all voluntary, right? Like, I remember people were screenshotting this outdated wallet, this desktop wallet that had like the travel rule button. So you can embed the necessary metadata in the transparent transaction to comply with money moving across borders or whatever. I don't even know what it is, but is completely voluntary and optional on the part of the user, right? It's like, I think nowadays it's the other way around, where transparency is optional and privacy is the default on Zcash, where admittedly it was, even a few years ago, probably not quite the case. We also have an explosion of shielded funds. The shielded pool graph gets posted all the time now because it's just parabolic, it's just vertical. And now over just about a third of the circulating supply is shielded, which is huge from what it was before. And also an indication that those are not on centralized exchanges, that those people are generally speaking more long-term holders. So it's a really interesting signal.
I mean, things are moving in a good direction.
And I hope all these coins, even our good friends over at the Monero community, I hope everything is successful. I believe in privacy, and I want more of it in the world. So, competition's good. It keeps us all honest, and so at least in terms of like the market effects. I don't know
Yeah,
about
and I
the other communities, but we won't go there.
I definitely believe that competition, like I again just watching the narratives of everything, I kind of feel like in the earlier days of Zcash, you had a lot of complacency on some of these things. Like, we can shield it, it's gonna be fine. Whereas like the post Zashi era seems to be like let's aggressively address this. And
Yeah.
same thing was like one thing I've noticed in the Monero community. First of all, like the ring signatures are fine, and then after attack, like piles up. It's like we need to move to full chain membership proofs, which seems like a really cool upgrade. It's from my understanding on testnet right now, so it could actually be mainnet very soon, which is exciting.
They have something called StressNet, which I think is some sort of testnet. That's what it's on. I'm not sure how that plays out, like rollout wise, but yeah.
And then
I think it's a good idea. I think they should have an encrypted ledger. That's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as far as like the exchange listing thing, the centralized exchange listing part is, I kind of think it's like almost it remains to be seen the benefits of, because Monero did really well after getting kicked off of Binance. Fiero bounced back in price after the initial jump. Who knows, right? And maybe that's just because it's still on Kraken and stuff like that. But one thing for sure is like Zcash prioritizing DEXs has gotten a lot of attention from the Monero community, and now I believe that there was a Monerotopia stream with the Thorchain founder talking about finally getting, and in my opinion, that's kind of a both sides coming together on this, because Thorchain initially was very, I would say, they were not super eager to add anything with privacy. I remember they sort of communicated publicly they were adding Dash. They communicated that for Zcash because there was a Zcash integration to Thorchain that ended up being repurposed for Maya later, but that got started, and they ended up backing off of all that. And now I think we see that there was a lot of, trades happening from, North Korean actors going through the network, and a lot of like shade and flack and stuff. And now it's just like, we're still standing, and despite being like careful, we still got the heat. We might as well just actually embrace privacy and add Monero.
Yeah.
Same time as like the Monero community is like, we need to be on a DEX like those Zcash people. And so now it's like both those things, the competitive elements of the space are bringing everyone towards this consensus on what works and what everyone should be doing.
Right. Yeah. Kind of, for lack of a better way of putting it, what you can get away with, right? What privacy integrations you can do that don't bring too much heat, but or a level of heat that you can withstand, I guess, is your thing. Yeah.
And also, I have to say, I really am grateful, just on a wide ecosystem standpoint, for Monero kind of pushing the boundaries, as far as aesthetics at least, of what will piss off the regulators and cops the most. And therefore, you could just see like, well, you got delisted from a lot of places in like the EU, but like, I don't know, Kraken, it's still in the US, still MEXC, a bunch of exchanges still have it. So that's as far as you can go, as far as getting delisted. It's like, okay, that's not bad. And then you're like, okay, how many Monero developers have been arrested and thrown in prison? I don't know of any. I know of other people who have. Unfortunately, people I know, like Alexei Pertsev and Roman Storm of Tornado Cash, and then the Samurai Wallet people, who also, with 3 others, have like the dubious connotation of being on my show and having been to prison for crypto. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
The point is, I guess, because that Overton window push, now it's just like, well, what if we just have a transparent option here, and then everyone who is super scared about this stuff is like, oh, that's better, that's fine. And so because like when we moved things this way, now it's just like Zcash is like poking at it, like, hey, can I come in? And it's working out.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of the branding, or a lot of the association with these things. I mean, I don't like seeing arguments about privacy coins like somebody replied to me like, oh, Zcash, huh? Like, what federal crimes have you got away with by using Zcash? And I was like, that's not my intention. I don't. I I intend to pay my taxes, even though I, dislike having to pay my taxes, and I intend to just carry on my normal life and not commit crimes with my privacy coin.
Yes.
I guess I'm crazy. I don't know. Yeah.
It's funny. Like, I think that every crypto, spice, I mean, it might sound like a spice to take. It's not. Every crypto should be able to be used for crime because you can't stop anyone from using it. That doesn't mean
Sure.
I want anyone to use it for that. And that doesn't mean, and also it depends on like crime. Like, and it's like also just the question of like, which crimes have you committed? It's just like, it's the most fed question I've ever heard. Like,
Wouldn't you like to know? Yeah,
yes.
exactly. And like, yeah. A lot of them be telling on themselves a little bit, both in like, why are you admitting to doing crimes online,
Yeah.
and B, like, you sound like a Fed. You sound like somebody who wants me to talk about the crimes that I commit with my stuff. And it's like, yeah. So again, Zcash has, on Vlad's podcast, that guy was calling us a bunch of pussies.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're still on the exchanges, and we still, whatever. It's not a badge of honor to be listed for us. It's just not. It's a difference in philosophy, and it's a difference in things. There's people in the Zcash community that think that we should deprecate transparent addresses. There's people that don't think we should be on so many centralized exchanges, and there's people that are, and people that think that transparent addresses are good for optionality. I mean, even within the ecosystem, there's disagreement, but it's healthy disagreement. It's not this like dunking kind of thing that, to their credit, Monero is like pretty good at. The Monero community kind of rules in a lot of ways, I will admit, but not
It's definitely like
way.
when they say like the streets will remember this or whatever. It's definitely like a lot of that. But I have my fun poking back. Like just today, I posted a thing that said, if it's listed on Kraken, then it's not a real privacy coin.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just as a little cheeky, kind of back and forth. Now the fellow on Vlad's podcast, Zeno, he was also on my show. Not Friday, but the Friday before that. And we had a good productive conversation. He's a cool dude. I also don't agree with that. Like, I get the sentiment of like just you being weenies by not, doing that. And it's like, well, everyone's kind of being a weenie because everyone either pays taxes or is not on X talking about how they don't pay taxes, right? Everyone, like... Everyone compromised to a certain extent, and it's just like, I don't know. It's at some point you got to draw the line, and this is where you go like deep into like the anarcho-capitalist type philosophy or whatever of like all government's evil, taxation is theft, all that stuff. Everyone who believes that at some point drew some line in the sand, their compromise of this is what I will do. That is, I will do this much. I'll accept this much, even though I don't want to, in order to live in society and not be in prison. And so everyone has a compromise, and I absolutely agree that we should be arguing over how much we compromise, but I don't think we should be judging people for the binary of a compromise when we all have compromised.
Yeah, exactly. No, none of us are innocent in this, and it's just, and also how the manner in which we compromise, I think, is a thing to debate too.
Yeah,
but yeah. So, my thing is just troll me all you want, just be factually correct about it. Make sure you have your facts straight and all that stuff. And
factually correct.
Asking an LLM and then just screenshotting the response and pasting it to me is not. Not that.
Yeah, and I actually delayed some posts I was going to make, not on this subject, on a different one, because I asked an LLM to analyze some pending legislation, and it came with a very good analysis and comparison. And then I went to look for like the primary sources, and it just was sending me a bunch of broken links. It was like hallucinating. And then like I'm still pretty much sure that the outputs it gave me were correct, but I'm just not going to say it until I have real confirmation of the primary source that it actually says this thing, because I don't want the embarrassment of just being like, me, a crypto pundit, an expert says this, and then someone's like, that's not true at all.
It's
You
just false.
just
Yeah,
got it
yeah,
from
yeah.
Grok, and you just took Grok's word for it. What a what a loser.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
going to
yeah,
be that
exactly.
guy.
Trust but verify kind of thing.
Yeah. So let's sort of like get into the anniversary thing, right? As we probably
Okay,
run towards the tail end of this thing.
sure.
9 years. First of all, do you remember Zcash's founding? Were you kind of around and paying attention back then?
So I came up through distributed systems and not through crypto
Mm-hmm.
to get here. So in 2016, I was working on a project called Orbit DB,
Mm.
and I really only knew about like the top 10 coins at that point. So I wasn't really following any of the newer, more experimental things. I didn't see the Radiolab episode when it came out or anything like that. So I wasn't there. I didn't have like a 9/11 moment where I remembered Zcash's founding or anything like that, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do remember it. I wasn't, I kind of seen it from like the outside a little bit. I think it was late 2016. I would have been like living on crypto for like a year by then. And
Nice.
so like I remember seeing the stuff. I remember, seeing all the conversations. And then I do remember like the first trading day or whatever, which I should I'm trying to like pull up the
That
charts and
was
stuff like that.
yeah, the $4,000 coin day or whatever.
Yes. And so I think CoinGecko shows the max at like 3,191, but it was like almost double that actually. It was I did the math somewhere, and I think it was like 5,900 or something like that was like
Sure.
the all-time high when it like first traded, and then that was like 8.5 BTC worth per Zec at that time. And that
Got
lasted
it.
for like minutes, of course. It just
Yeah.
quickly, but like I remember that as one of those first big hyped launches. As far as like almost every other crypto sort of launch, you had some mining, some with this and that, and then it built later. This is one of the first ones that like right out the gate was hot, and I was just like, "Whoa, this is
Trading and it was
something."
hot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And Nate is like Nate underscore Zach or something.
Mm-hmm.
Nate Wilcox, Zuko's brother, has a recent thread about this thing called the slow start, where they were very careful with issuance at the beginning because they wanted to make sure like not a ton of coins were minted before they could feasibly do something if something was wrong or whatever. So that contributed to this big hike in price and things like that.
Yeah, which is another thing of like, there's a million ways to distribute a coin, and they all have their merits. Something that has been a benefit to Monero, I think, is it had an extremely fast emission curve in the beginning, and then it just hit its tail emission, sell as they get diluted as much because it's like 0.8% per year or something like that inflation right now, and it's just the same or less as a percentage over time. And so you kind of got all like the carnage gone early days, whereas like I think people have criticized Grin, another privacy coin, their emission curve as being sort of way too fair, where it starts off slow and then over time starts to go up. In that now it's just like the hype died off, and now you have people just being like dumping this like it's on fire kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like there's different ways to do it, all that.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So Monero is currently in their tail emissions now, right?
That's what I understand. Yeah. So
Yeah.
lower than Bitcoin right now. And so I have a feeling when you see like the price charts and stuff, there's a little bit more of that stable upward trajectory kind of thing, maybe as a result of this.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is if any of these are to be adopted as like a true alternative currency and a true alternative payment system or whatever, I do think, and I'm doing a little no true Scotsman thing there, but I think you know what I mean. I think like mainstream adoption, but fighting these things is relying a little bit on some price stabilization that needs to happen.
Yeah,
because people are afraid to spend their coins because they don't want $1 million pizza situation happening again.
Yeah, or the opposite. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, exactly. So there would have to be some stability into it. I don't know how. I'm not a macroeconomist. I don't know how you would do something like that, or if that just happens naturally as part of market effects or something. But that would be a requirement for people.
Yeah, I
Where,
think so.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
do we have any questions in the chat or anything? Do we want to talk to?
Let me see. I think I've sort of addressed them um,
Okay,
as we went along.
nice.
The
I had
capers
no
also
idea.
said something about ASIC resistance is a fool's errand, since ASICs are the closest you get to economic security, like slashing in proof of work. Interesting comment. On
Sure.
that thing, there is a I have to dig it up somewhere, but the Sia Coin team, back when that was still a thing,
I remember that.
did that proof of work mining, like several piece, like Medium article. And it really was very interesting. Like, it's one of the more eye opening ones. It came off kind of like a cynical take almost on proof of mining. There's like a state of proof of work mining in cryptocurrency or something. But it
Mhm.
was just very realistic as far as like the effects on decentralization with like ASICs and like what happens over time as far as like decentralizing effects of ASICs and things like that. And as far as also, if you don't have ASICs, how long can you maintain that before you get ASICs? And then also just even like what are the centralization effects of just never having ASICs? Maybe you end up something worse, for example. Just a lot of like explorations from like a very professional standpoint as far as like actual mining data over the course of like a decade of crypto kind of thing. And it was just like
Yeah.
really interesting stuff that they broke down. And I think that's like people get really, as I mentioned, very like misty eyed about proof of work. I think that in order to be a fan of proof of work or proof of stake, let's be very clear, if you're educated enough, you just have to have the very like realistic, almost semi-cynical like idea of how things are going to shake out as far as power structures, as far as things like that. Just like
Yeah.
some people will, people with a lot of money will control proof of stake systems, and maybe a couple whales will just hold on and never sell while other ones will, and then maybe they get entrenched, and that's always a
Yeah.
problem. And then with the mining pools, like Bitmain owns everyone kind of, and those kinds of things. Like,
Absolutely.
it's just that you have to be very realistic about how those things shake out.
Yeah. 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 I mean, let's break it down. So, proof of work is. I like the metaphor of it's equivalent to having to drill in the ground for oil, or equivalent to having to go to a mine and get gold and bring it back. You run all this algorithm, you create this heat, and it goes out in the world. There's something tangible about that I think resonates with people a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also like the proof of stake argument, where it basically says, let's just have people with the most tokens vote on stuff, and then people say, well, isn't that just create pockets of wealth or whatever? And it's like, well, that's a proxy for what people are doing with their mining hardware anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just do that and skip all. It's like proof of stake with extra steps. So I see some sort of hybrid approach being the way, because you benefit from the security benefits of both of those systems. There's things that proof of work can protect from that proof of stake can't. There's things that proof of stake can protect from that proof of work can't.
Yeah.
And I think if you can sufficiently leverage the two of them in a very carefully designed, well tested, audited, approved system, then you would be very successful.
Yes, I definitely agree, in theory on all that.
Yeah,
Now,
theory.
the kind of where this kind of ends up being, Mert in his one of his comments kind of pointed out that like you can today it's rather easy to devise an attack vector, like a sophisticated multi-front attack vector that kind of attacks both things at the same time. And it's like, well, probably. it's not as easy as, well, we got proof of work and proof of stake. It's going to be super hard to attack. And there is, of course, the, like, one thing that I think is a great argument against a hybrid model. Again,
Yeah.
I tend to like hybrid models more than whatever else. That's where my current position is, I guess. But a great argument against it is you're one of the two has got to be better, and you're weakening the security where you should just go full on one or full on the other. Like, why not just be only mined or only stake?
Yeah.
And that's a great argument, I guess. There's just some nuance to like where you go from there, but it's kind of true, right? Like, and for example, like Decred, as far as I know, is like 1% proof of work mined at this point. Like almost everything comes from stake. And it's like, at that point, why don't you migrate entirely to proof of stake? Why are you paying like one little guy with his ASIC in his basement to sort of like be the linchpin of the whole network,
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this and we've thought about this. The reason why one would keep proof of work around, and the debate here is around whether this is a sufficiently strong argument or not. It's a true argument, but whether or not you could say, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. Two things. One is the cost of a double spend is higher in a proof of work system because you have to, again, it's all about maintaining this attack in a proof of work system rather than just doing it once. So like in a proof of stake system, you can just gobble up all the stake, double spend, double sign, whatever you want to do. And you can do that once, and you could probably keep doing it as long as people while you wait for people to add more capital to the system to outweigh you. On a proof of work, you have to maintain that. So double spending becomes more expensive over time on a proof of work system. That's a mitigation that you have that you don't have in proof of work, proof of stake rather. The other one is that you have some sort of liveness guarantee where in a proof of stake system, if there is some sort of stall happening on the BFT side, if they can't come to the right quorum, the whole system just kind of stops until you can get all the finalizers and some sort of off-band communication to reorganize and update and blah, 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 or the validators, I should say, because we're just talking about regular proof of stake. Whereas a proof of work chain is going to be anybody can join as a miner, anybody can contribute hash power to the system at any point in time permissionlessly, and you have much better liveness guarantee there than you would have in a proof of stake system.
It's again, one funny thing about that is I remember before meme coins were a thing, like way back in the day, there were shit coins, and people use like maximalists. I get so annoyed that they took over that
anything
term.
That's not Bitcoin is a shit coin, right?
Because it is a real thing where back in like the 2013 era, or people just proof of work mined random like elephant coin, like, or so Ron Paul coin or whatever from like scratch.
Yeah.
And there was just all these like random. There's no way they're just shit coins. Like there's no way else to describe them. And then they trade those, and then they lose interest, and they go to zero, kind of. But you still see some of those around, and there's always just like one guy who wants to keep the chain going, or it's just dead for years, and then some guy picks it up and starts mining again.
And then all of a sudden there's new blocks, and the
liveness of that is really, it's always fun to see.
Yeah. I remember I did a workshop with somebody, and they had a Bitcoin fork, and they were trying to create like a Boston coin or something like that, just as a, like, here's how to make your own cryptocurrency workshop. So, it's always, it's interesting to see. So I like hybrid models, details pending, but I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. And I put up on the screen, I also dumped the link in all the comments. There's a David Vorick article from May of 2018, The State of Cryptocurrency Mining, which goes into all this stuff. And then he had a follow-up called The Fundamentals of Proof of Work. And both of these articles, like, I think have really stood the test of time because they, were getting very much in-depth, detailed about this kind of thing. And I still, like, when these arguments start popping up today of the various things, I still find myself going back to these articles to be like, they're still very informative as far as today. So yeah, I would definitely, I left it in the comments under every iteration of this stream.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like look into that if you want to. It's a fun read.
I
So
will. All
let
this
me
stuff.
see what else we got. Oh, as another thing, I'll have to find the playlist for this, but I think it was like 2 years ago on this channel, I did that. I don't know why the proof of work versus proof of stake battle was such a hot one at that time, but
Mhm.
I did like a 4 podcast series, one pro proof of work, one pro proof of stake, and then 2 pro hybrid models for Decred and Dash. And it's
Cool.
just so if you want like 3.5 hours of content on this very debate, again, I'm not saying you do specifically, but
One does.
someone
One
might.
wants. Yes,
It's on.
I do actually.
I'll dig up
Yeah.
the playlist and share it because it's it's interesting, and I kind of learned a lot. And there's a lot of passionate arguments on both sides,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty
Sounds
cool.
like our regular feedback sessions because we talk to proof of work maxis and we talk to proof of stake maxis,
Hmm.
and hearing the arguments from both sides is
Yeah,
very instructive.
and also like the hybrid model things of just how those end up working out. The funny thing on that is, it seems like, and this is also a concept that I've sort of had. I'm just throwing with the playlist of my channel up on the screen there. It's
Yeah.
and I upload them to X as well. And I'm gonna have to dig up those links and then put them under the X video just so it's like all in the same thing. But yeah, it's I've noticed that it seems like the which is better kind of thing seems. I have this idea in my. It seems like everyone who's involved with the hybrid model sort of seems to think that the proof of stake side is better or it's more important at the end of the day. And again, I'm putting words in people's mouths that they'll probably, I didn't say that, but they tend to see like the benefits of proof of work tend to be mainly the liveness kind of thing, but also tends to be the coin distribution models. And so like when if it's mined in the early years, you tend to have a lot of like coins get distributed because miners have to sell in order to pay their bills, where stakers can just sit from day one and accumulate, for example.
Yeah.
And
And
so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
staking systems seem to tend towards inflation instead of having a fixed supply cap and doing block rewards or anything like that too, which I noticed is interesting. And
Is that coincidental, do you think, or do you think that has something to do with the actual, like how the actual fundamentals are?
I think
Just
I don't know.
not like you or anyone knows. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't have insight in their minds. I think there's probably just a precedent problem. So, like,
mm-hmm.
oh, all the other proof of stake chains do inflation, so we should probably just do inflation too. Or it's like, I don't know, Solana. Let's take Solana. Solana's sick. Solana is a well engineered system that is designed for one specific purpose, which is like economic performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they do inflation. So like it's I think anybody that's going to launch anything like that afterwards is going to say, oh, well, they did it, so we should probably just do that too. Or instead of, but as I say this, I know there's going to be like a dozen examples of proof of stake chains that have a fixed supply cap as well, because there's like it's like almost like the Stephen Wolfram space of all the different possibilities of iterations of
Mm-hmm.
properties of blockchains. Like you can navigate through that and find a proof of stake chain with a $21 million supply cap that did it from the beginning and incentivizes people to spend to distribute the token somehow. But I'm just speaking in general terms here. I think that's what we're sort of dealing with here. But again, I don't know. I don't know why that seems to be the case.
And funny enough, like my supposition, where I think that proof of work distributes a lot better in the early days. My friend Justin Bonds, who's a researcher, says that the research does not hold up to this at all. And he says that proof of stake does better. And I want to see the research, and I'm skeptical, but I'm also willing to say that my just guesstimations are wrong on this. That
Yeah.
and it's also there's a lot of like conflation here, where it's just like you need to distribute the coins in the beginning. You need to distribute the coins somehow, and with proof of stake, inherently you have to either start out with one coin and therefore one person has all the coins and gets to
For a
determine
second.
the
Yeah.
entire supply where that goes, unless he sells and then two people decide or whatever. Either that has to be the case, or you have to do some sort of a pre-allocation, like a pre-sale type thing.
How do you get the validators to be
Yes,
weighted on day one?
because you
Right. That's
can't
the big.
stake
Yeah.
from day one. You can mine from zero, right? So maybe it's just like every chain. Like as far as I understand, the Quai network, for example, distributed like a giant amount of supply to like early people at day one, and then it just mined from there. And so that's kind of like the ICO type thing. Like Ethereum was a proof of work ICO, for example, but like
Yeah.
all the first of its kind, actually. But a lot of these chains might do, it just might be that everyone does some sort of a pre-mine ICO, VC lockup, whatever these days. So according to those data sets, the mined coins don't do as well in terms of distribution. But if you talk about early days like Bitcoin and Litecoin and Dash and Monero and Zcash and places like that, maybe the things are different
That
because they
makes
didn't
sense.
have pre-mine things. So again,
Yeah.
the devil's in all these details.
Right. Right. The centralization you probably see, or the lack of distribution, I should call it, is probably on
Mm-hmm.
some sort of exchange or off ramp, right? Because if the miners are selling their tokens as they mine them, they're probably just accumulating on Coinbase or something like that, and that's why you don't see as clean distribution. Maybe I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Yeah, I don't do a lot of chain analysis type things, so I wouldn't be able to
Mm-hmm.
really tell you. But that would be my theory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's another theory too, is that the staking might create some sort of buy pressure instead of the sell pressure that the mining creates. But again, this is all like guesswork, and you don't know what the market conditions are going to be when you finally are able to do all these things. And yeah.
Yeah.
um,
Interesting. Another, because I've thought of that as well before, is like the sell pressure from miners could drive a coin into the ground. On the other hand, sell pressure from like you need a thriving ecosystem, and in order to facilitate trading, you do need liquidity.
yeah.
And you could say that a very inactive proof of stake chain, for example, is just sitting there, and there's not a lot of trading activity, so it kind of like just trends downwards. Whereas a proof of work chain of a similar size would have a lot more trading activity, therefore a lot more companies are invested in the project because they have to facilitate trading, and then exchanges need more liquidity to facilitate all of that going through. So there's that too. So this is all stuff that like an actual researcher would have to go through and like, pick apart and just see like which one, like, because as far as like, I have noticed this when I've run ad campaigns and stuff for crypto wallets, and I notice when people come and say, "Hey, I saw the thing," the one feature that everyone likes is staking. So from a user perspective, they love to be able to stake and earn. Now, how does that work out on the macroeconomic level? I have no idea. But just that from a product to entice people
Yeah.
in, especially a shielded staking thing, where you're just like, you know
Feel the
what?
stake. Right.
Like I get to hold on to this, and I'm just going to get more over time. And like I get my shielded nest egg forever. It's my, you know, again, feel free
Yeah.
to steal this, but my 401(k), right? It's
Nice. I
just
like that.
your own little saving
I
mechanism
like
right
that.
there.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah. That what I see in the trenches is that the whales don't really care about staking that much because their multiplier is so high and the price action can take them, to the
Mm-hmm.
moon basically, especially with what's going on right now. If you came into this rally with 100,000 Zach, you're sitting pretty right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just a regular person with 10 Zach, from my experience, you are very interested in staking because your goal is to accumulate as much ZEC as possible. So why wouldn't you hold your coins in a staking pool rather than somewhere else, right? Um, so that's what I see too, and it sort of comes to that idea of democratization, where it's another way for people to participate in the Zcash economy rather than just buying and holding.
Yeah.
Where if you have 5 ZEC, buying and holding isn't that exciting to you. It's cool to see the price go up, but you're not like, it's not changing your life in any way. But if you felt like you were getting 4%, 10% or something annually, then it's like, okay, something's happening. It's good to see.
And that's one of those things that, as I mentioned, all my years in this space, and I'm still just learning what I feel like basic fundamentals, like newly. Like every month I learn something that I should have probably known since the beginning. And one of these things was I always had this like romantic, very much like a Monero community style idea of the value proposition of crypto. Of this is like rogue money that you use when the government tries to censor your payments, and you can buy private coffee or children on the dark web, whatever you're doing, you can just do that. And that's the key value proposition. You drill down on it and people love it. And then, of course, over the course, the one thing that has been constant over the course of the crypto's life cycle is people love number go up. And there's a certain element of that where I have in the past been frustrated, like maybe what I perceive as like short-term greed in some ways, of like, no, I mean, these fundamentals it's all about freedom. What are you doing? This stupid.
But yeah.
And it
Sovereign money.
took me a while to realize that people's ability to earn and save is one of the most censored things by the traditional financial system, as far as like accredited investor things, as far as insiders and all this other stuff that people. And then as far as like inflation hits everyone, like I would say 99.9% of the average person in a, U.S., Western Europe, Australia, South Korea, Japan kind of nation, they can buy 99.9% of what they want to buy with their credit card or bank card. They could just buy it. They're not being censored for almost anything today. There's fringe cases where they are, but for the most part, they're not. But everyone is being dumped on by the central banks every single month. Everyone is being blocked from earning real yield. Everyone is trying to get into high yield stable coins, and literally the banks are lobbying Congress to amend the Genius Act to put caps on the yields that you can offer to people. Like they're being have the crap censored out of their earning potential. And so when people are like, "Well, can I stake?" That's just because that's the killer use case. And so I'm no longer like turning down my nose on that. On the other hand, one of the reasons why a lot of cryptos really took off at the early days, I remember the mining boom when everyone was just like, "Oh, can I mine this? I've been mining this." And in 2013, I had an auto mechanic who was fixing my car battery, and I mentioned this whole Bitcoin thing. He hadn't heard about it. And I was like, "Oh, can I pay in Bitcoin?" He's like, "Oh, let me think about it." And then next time I saw him, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've been mining it, by the way." And he's like, "Already mining." Like people hear I can run this thing and earn, and they start mining at home. So like CPU mining and individual staking are like the horseshoe theory. They're like the same thing on opposite ends of things.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, people just want to participate. They want to feel like they're a part of something, and something that they have a lot more control over than what all the fiat things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And it all for me, it all just goes down to the sort of quantitative easing, the Fed just updating accounts on their, the banks have accounts with the Fed, and the Fed just tells you how much money you have if you're a central bank, and then it just goes from there. The inflation and the money printing and all that stuff. I don't like that. All my personal investments have fixed supply caps. Like I make that like a thing that you can't easily make more of this, right?
Of course.
I like those sort of things, but that's just because it's easy for me to understand it better. You know what I mean? It could be not the way to think about it. I don't know how I could be wrong about that being valuable, but who knows?
Yeah, I
You
mean,
can
I don't.
decide.
I think that at least is valuable in that you either want a fixed supply cap on your asset, or you want any inflation. You want to make sure you get more of it when it
Yeah, there you
inflates.
go. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's one reason why I think that people are super touchy about changing like a 21 million limit or something like that, because they bought in to a certain piece of the pie, and they're willing to ride the pie up and down. But if you're making their piece of the pie smaller, that's like a rug pull. It's like a scam.
yeah. You need to be able to say, well, circulation 16 million now. It's only ever going to be 21 million. So even if I get diluted, it's only going to be, there's a cap on that. Um, but I think there's a sort of a part of the reason why the Zcash community is so protective of this 21 million supply cap is because people bought in thinking that it was going to be a $21 million supply cap.
Mm-hmm.
So if you change that, you're almost like defrauding the investors in a social contract kind of way, which sucks.
Yes.
We don't want to do that. Which, again, could be an argument that people are buying into a proof of work system and they don't
Mm-hmm.
want a hybrid sort of thing, and that's a totally valid argument too,
Mm-hmm.
uh, from like an investor's perspective or something like that.
Yeah, and as far as like any kind of evolutionary thing, like I bought into a peer-to-peer electronic cash system with Bitcoin. I mean, I didn't buy; I earned into it. But
Yeah,
then, I stopped accepting fiat and closed my bank account. Was living all off this stuff, and then I got rug pulled. Like the thing got congested. I never was able to like. I was waiting 2 hours for confirmation. Like my
okay,
life
yeah,
got upset, and I had to switch to other cryptos. And Bitcoin still has never recovered since 2016, and it's still not viable for that. So I got rugged hard, and so like a lifestyle rug, everything. And
yeah,
so like I Bitcoin changed that. Without that, everything changes. I guess what I like about governance, especially like coin holder governance, is if you buy, let's say, one ZEC, and if you have one of 21 million forever, and you have that share over deciding the rest of the equation, right? Where as far as if they're like, well, let's vote. If Are we going to proof of stake? Are we doing a hybrid system? Are we,
yeah,
whatever? At least your deal is honored, that you invested into a piece of this living technology, and your piece remains. Whereas when you
yeah,
start changing the supply, then it's just like, okay, well, now your piece gets changed at that point. That's the one thing I think that is, I don't know if I'd say it's not up for debate, but it's like, if you talk about like, where do I draw the red line as far as like, at what level of taxation do you have to hit before you want to leave the country and renounce your citizenship? Like, everyone has a line of like the red
yes,
line. I kind of feel like the red line for almost all of crypto would be changing the eventual supply.
yeah. I think you're right. That's a at best like a long term rug, like a rug that will take place over a
Mm-hmm.
certain period of time. But I also like thinking about, just for fun, how you would do something like that. Let's imagine there's a there's a Y coin, there's an X coin, so
Mm-hmm.
a W coin, or
Yeah,
that
you got to do
wants to
W
change.
coin because X coin was Dash's first name for like a week.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I saw XEC somewhere on the
That's
timeline recently.
eCash,
Ecash.
XEC, just
Okay,
like
okay.
XRP is X Ripple, whatever.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Um, so there's a W cache that's not Zcash, that will never be
Mm-hmm.
Zcash, has a 21 million supply cap, and you want to change it to 210 million, just
Mm-hmm.
because you're crazy, whatever. So with all of Zcash's properties, we don't have the transparent ledger, so you can't just airdrop everybody based on their current distribution.
Yeah.
So you'd have to have some sort of voluntary system where you go and provide a viewing key to some third party system, and then that third party system basically takes something from issuance and gives it to you proportional to your stake or something like that. So everybody that opts in could get 10x their tokens and retain their ownership over that percentage of it. But then you'd have, it's similar to the Sprout pool
Mm-hmm.
where there's still like 25,000 tokens kind of hanging out in the Sprout pool. And we're just like, here's the instructions on how to get it out. And
Yeah.
that's it. So like, and it's up to people to actually come and move their coins out. I actually like Sprout right where it is. I like
Mm-hmm.
exactly the amount of coins that should be in Sprout, I think are in Sprout. And it would be great if nothing literally ever changed there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Now, first of all, I haven't watched the Sprout pool. Is there are there any coins going out of it still, or is it kind of gone to zero?
no, it hasn't. This
It's
is the
got
important.
almost flat, right?
It's flat. Yeah. There's really zero activity in Sprout, and there hasn't been for months.
Now, can it go back in, or is it been sort of blocked with turnstiling?
I believe it's pretty blocked at this point. I know that the modern full nodes only accept version 5 transactions, and you would need to do a version 4 transaction to do a Sprout thing. So you'd have to like construct, either use like a older version of some software, or really like manually construct a Sprout transaction and then go and paste it into the Block Explorer or something like that to get it into the mempool. So it's intentionally a little harder to do Sprout stuff. But the fact that, there's all the turnstile accounting system, and the fact that it has a positive balance is a signal that the disclosed and patched inflation bug never was exploited. And it's a really nice indicator of that. It's almost a proof that, the $21 million supply cap remains.
Yeah. So I guess if the inflation bug had been exploited, then you'd see the Sprout pool drain to zero, and then some people would be like, "I can't get my coins out."
It would drain to zero, or it would have technically a negative balance, which would be an indication that there was an exploit. But so having it at 25,000 coins is really nice. I don't think we should ever. There's some talk on the forums of like, should we just deprecate the pool or whatever? And it's like, no, just leave it right where it is. Perfect. Because you could see like, oh, there's only 25,000 coins, not a big deal. But then you could see the FUD in like the year 2030, where it's like the CEO of Zcash destroyed $50 billion worth of, or something like that. And then you just avoid all that crap. Yeah.
Yeah. FUD is always an important thing to kind of dodge. But yeah, so then, so it was a Sprout, and then it was Sapling, and then Orchard, right? Or did I miss one in there? So, what's the Sapling pool looking like?
It's going down. Let me see. There's 757,000 coins in Sapling, and that is steadily decreasing. So you're still seeing movement out of Sapling, which is really cool to see. Sapling's not a bad pool. It's just not as performant as Orchard, and still it was a public trusted setup, but still had, it had a much larger trusted setup with many more participants, any of which, if they deleted their part of it, it would make the whole thing safe. So it's much better setup. But then Orchard comes along, and Shunbo and team and everybody made Halo, which just means you just don't have to have a trusted setup anymore. They invented brand new math and cryptography and stuff, and
really
achieved
cool. Yeah,
zero trusted setup. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
and then Orchard just continues to climb and climb and climb. We're almost at 5 million in Orchard right now, which is so cool.
Yeah, and that's going to be also an interesting thing, as far as something I've been sort of watching on the side is like it's like shielded, or private, I should say, market cap and private transactions. Now, obviously, not all privacy is created equal, but like if you compare, say, the Orchard pool versus like the market cap of Monero versus Tornado Cash at its peak versus Samurai Wallet versus Dash's Mixing at its peak, all these kinds of things, you kind of compare them all, and then it is interesting to see, because also I do have a theory that that the biggest total like privacy pool of any kind will at some point be on a network that has a transparency option, because just people will be wanting to run public DeFi pools, for example. They want to see how much money is in there. That's got to be transparent. Or like a big government fund is like doing this, or a big nonprofit does that, or like all this kind of stuff. And then the total market cap of whatever asset does all these things will be large enough that the private shielded part of it will be bigger than a only shielded private entirely other blockchain. And that's just a guess. Obviously, it's not the case today, but I think over the long term it will be, and maybe I'll be wrong over the long term too.
No, I think you're right, and I think it's yet another thing that everybody's mad at Zcash about that we might be right about. Want to hear my cool theory on what might happen in the transparent pool, though, that I think is really, really neat. So there's a proposal to do an L2 for Starknet on top of transparent outputs like they do in Ethereum. And the transparent outputs would carry some metadata and zero knowledge witness to whatever proofs are happening on the Starknet chain, and which is all shielded, so to speak. You know, Starknet is a private L2 system that is by Eli Ben Sasson, who is one of the Zero Cash paper authors. So there's a lot of pedigree happening here, and there's already a proof of concept or a production system running on Ethereum. So imagine if the shielded pool then still has transparent transactions for fiat on and off ramping. But then most of the activity in the transparent pool is actually a private L2 or multiple private L2s. So then you have this sort of segmentation of the network where you can say, okay, imagine that Ledger has finally implemented shielded ZAC and Trezor has finally implemented shielded ZAC, and the shielded pool is like 50 to 60% of the store of value. And then you have the transparent pool, but most of that is actually just encrypted L2 activity in the transparent outputs. And then a tiny portion of that is your on and off ramping, and that's the whole system. That's pretty fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
If you ask me, I think that would be totally sick and pretty feasible given what we know now and how to implement things.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll definitely be quite something else. Also, I think it'll be interesting to see, like, you have exchanges today that do proof of reserves, right? It's not universal. And even some of the ones that do proof of reserves don't do it for all coins, for example. And I do think that the DeFi competition, where all DeFi everything, it's all public. I think that people are going to find that to be like a gold standard, and they're going to demand that minimum standard from centralized exchanges as well, in which case you're going to be like, look, here's our proof. And I think that, for example, if Kraken does this, for example, they're going to have like publish their Monero view key, or what, because from my understanding, full chain membership proofs gives a much better view key for this, right? As far as I know, the view keys for Monero right now are only incoming. You can't see outgoing as well. So it's like an incomplete view key. It's not very useful for these transparency things. But so you would be able to publish under full chain membership proofs an actual thing that lets you kind of see the pool, maybe in a clunkier way than a transparent address, but something similar. And I think that'll become more demanded, and then everyone will sort of move to this sort of a thing. And it'll be interesting to see. I definitely think that a lot of the FUD around privacy becomes a lot less, and not all of it is without merit, but the legs get really lost by having some kind of transparency available, where like the inflation bug, do we know there is one? I don't think so, but who knows? It's just like being able to have like a turnstiling system, but also a transparent thing where it adds limits to that. It's a matter of economic integrity to be able to account for your tokens in your system, right? I think that's an important thing. And you could make the argument that yes, privacy is about shielding and about hiding activity and things like that, but it's also about selective disclosure.
which in a system like Monero, as you just pointed out, you have problems with selective disclosure. It's sort
Yeah.
of
Clunkiness,
all
I
or
would say.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas if you have a full viewing key and you just want to, show your accountant what you did, but just your accountant, you kind of have the ability to do something close to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cryptographically secure that your accountant's not just going to print everything out and show their friends, but like, oh, it's a shitty accountant. You should find a new one.
Yeah.
So, like,
Of course.
yeah. So, selective disclosure is a really important part of privacy. So, you could make the argument that a lot of these other teams don't have selective disclosure, and therefore may be compromising some privacy. But it's good. It goes back to that deep philosophical divide between the two communities, where it's just like, I want to be able to get away with everything and not ever pay taxes on any of this or whatever, versus like, I just want to live in a world where I can be private for no other reason than privacy is a virtue.
Yeah. And I have to say, a lot of this also extends to the whole concept of we're still so early, which you hear over and over in crypto. It's kind of a funny meme at this point. But we're at the point where there's like me and like 100 other people or so that just only use crypto. And most other people are still live in the legacy fiat world. And so, yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I'm not that. I admit I admire the purist or the maxi in you that does that.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's not without its bumps for sure, and be the guinea pig. But as far as like when people, I think a lot of people, and this, but like the criticism of Zcash in the past, one of them is very like academic and theoretical, and it's not practical kind of thing. People are saying, "Oh, these proofs are so beautiful and mathematical and all this stuff," but then you're just, you're just swiping your card like everyone else. You're mega cucked or whatever people would say. But then on the other side, I find that to be like a lot of Monero people at the same time also love to go to their local like agorist farmers market and pay for this or buy for something there. And then they still have a mortgage and a fiat banking account and all the other stuff. And so it's like they don't have neither side, I would say, has full immersion into the system, into like the economy, to where now they have to see what is or isn't good necessarily. It's
the same argument as, I hate to say it because it's really reductionist, but it's the same argument as the people who are like, oh, you hate capitalism, but you have an iPhone, or you hate social media, but you have a Facebook account. It's like, yeah, because I live in the real world, and I need to interact with people who don't share my values, and some of that means that I need to be on a social media site that I don't like, or whatever. You know what I mean? Otherwise, and that's why I admire you, is because you resign yourself to a shittier quality of life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, although lately it's been a great quality of life. Like,
well, lately there
was some last couple of years, I would say I don't notice it at all. Like,
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I would love to just like, I'm sure you've written this up or whatever, but I'd love to just get like you should put a book out that's basically just like how to do this.
Yeah,
I think it would sell.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it'll happen at some point. But I guess the thing is with maybe you could say the criticism of like the Zcash model is you're giving up too much privacy and too many loopholes for regulators to say you can't have any privacy. I would say kowtowing too much to transparency, and probably what I would say criticism from the Monero side is or what their position might be is we need to have default privacy, not just default privacy, which is what again we'd argue that Zcash has now, but like only privacy, because otherwise we will never get privacy at all. We will never get a sufficient level of it. And I think that both sides can you can kind of resolve those arguments through just watching out how things play out, right?
I think so. I mean, I hope that we can find some more middle ground here. Did you ever see the YouTuber Greg Canavera, or I forget his name, JREG he goes by, and he does like political content that's pretty funny.
I must have seen him. I don't watch his stuff often though.
His political theory is that the far left and the far right should look across the center at each other and find out where there's common ground and basically start building a new government there. Like whatever they agree on, that's the important stuff. And then, he's like a militant anti-centrist. And I like that point of view. It's useful to take that point of view when there's such contention between two communities like this. Like we can't even find a standard definition of what privacy means between Zcash and Monero on some level. So it's really hard, but I still hold out hope that we can.
What is it? What is a privacy coin? And first of all, as I've contended for a while, there is no such thing. It's like, what's a security coin? What's a ease of use coin? What's like, you should be able to do privacy, otherwise you suck. There's no such thing. Like everything should be a privacy coin. But also, like, is Litecoin a privacy coin? That's a great conversation these days because Litecoin has MWeb, which is confidential transactions and the mixy thing that happens with every block, the whatever you want to encapsulate. And Litecoin did get delisted in a couple of Korean exchanges after implementing MWeb. And European payment processors do say when you select Litecoin, some of them do, I've seen screenshots, don't send MWeb coins. And like, I would say if we're saying privacy features equals privacy coin, definitely Litecoin is one now. And definitely Dash has been one since day one. And if you're saying privacy focus is like, that's the big thing you're trying to do, that gets squishier. Then that's kind of like Zcash, Monero, Xano, and that's it, sort of, maybe. Yeah. Then you wouldn't say Litecoin, but
privacy. Yeah.
And then if you have the criteria of if it's listed on Binance, it's not a privacy coin, expand that to Kraken, and then nothing is. You get nothing.
Right. And then you get all the way down to like, I guess you just have to use paper cash if you want the true privacy. And then even then it's like, well, there's still serial numbers on there. There's still all this stuff. So like nothing is pure. Nothing is as tidy as, I say this a lot. I use that word tidy a lot on Twitter arguments because I'm just always like, this is not as tidy as you think it is. It's not as just cut and dry and clean. There's so much nuance and all this stuff because like, that's why I applaud the full chain membership proofs for Monero because one of my criteria is the ledger encrypted with sufficiently advanced zero knowledge proofs. That's a big thing because it sort of means there's a tying yourself to the mast aspect to that is important. And I know it's not it's now the default mode. I know it wasn't always the default mode, but now that it is, it's sort of that argument of privacy by default is not a Zcash thing is losing its legs more and more. And that, like, again, it's a point that it's not a 1 or a 0. It's how private is it? How for your use case too? Because I think if you're, if you're going to go hire a hitman on the dark web, maybe Monero is your coin. I don't know.
Well, I mean, they did actually try that with me and it didn't go anywhere, but so apparently it's not.
Tried to kill you?
I think it's a silly thing. I don't think they sincerely tried. But it was in 2017. I wrote some article for Cointelegraph about the Oasis darknet market going down, and someone started a Monero crowd fund for a hitman, but they were posting about it in Reddit and our darknet markets. Just like, you clowns, what the hell is this? This is silly.
Well, like Reddit, like. Yes. Or how to hire hitman, and then on Reddit, it's Reddit, so somebody was like, "Oh, hitman here,"
which is pretty silly. But like,
my favorite article about hitman was the one that was basically like it's all scams. Like they'll just take your money and not ever do anything, or they'll subcontract to somebody who doesn't do anything, and then they'll come back and be like, "Yeah, sorry, we couldn't kill that guy." And you're like, "All right," they're like, "We're gonna keep your money anyway." It's like, okay.
The funny thing about that, by the way, is. I will do a pop culture recommendation. There's a movie that's relatively recent, like last year maybe, called Hitman. And it's about it's about some guy who he impersonates a hitman for for the police, right? He's an undercover hitman impersonator who entraps people. I would call it entrapment, but basically gets them to agree to hire him to kill someone, and then they get that person, and then he ends up letting some lady off the hook, basically saying like, don't do this, like you got to turn your life around instead, and then ends up shenanigans ensue. The funny thing is it's like 80% a nonfiction work, that there was literally a guy who did this and entrapped like hundreds of hitmen, of potential customers of hitmen over the years, and this lady did show up that he convinced not to take a hit out on her husband and just go whatever. That's all factual. Some of the other stuff later is not. It's dramatized. But like the fact that this is a real thing, that there are a lot, anyone who hires a hitman is basically a dum-dum. And so it's like real precedent. That's why I like those real stories, because I was always wondering like who goes to r/darknet markets and like does anything there. Like who are these people? They're not, they're not sending their best. Let's just say that at least.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's every accusation is a confession kind of thing. A lot of this stuff is like, when I get really conspiratorial, I'm like, it seems more like they're feds than we are, but we probably, who knows? We have feds coming around here. The fuck if I know. I'm not. Yeah. It's way above my pay grade to figure out. Like, I don't think we do.
I try to be like above a lot of pettiness, but one thing that I freely admit I will constantly be petty about is pointing out that the former lead maintainer of Monero, Fluffy Pony, who I'm not a fan of, admitted in court documents that he agreed to be an Interpol informant. Now, the where there's no proof or evidence is he says they just never called him back. And so like, are you going to believe him? That's where it hinges. But the point is he agreed to be an informant, therefore FedCoin. I don't know.
It doesn't matter if he called you back. Your intention was there to
I'll do it again, right? Like,
and we're from fucking New England. You can't be a fucking rat.
Of course.
Yes.
Find out. Everyone's watched The Departed. Everyone knows,
Exactly.
So. Yes. Yeah. But so that's my slice of pettiness in this whole thing of like the projection of like, I mean.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all just noise in the end. I think it's all about just building stuff. And then in the end, luckily it's a decentralized system. So whoever runs the software decides in the end, at least with our current proof of work, which is terrifying and reassuring at the same time for all sorts of reasons.
Fun stuff. So 2 hours from now we have the Zcash the Zcash handle is doing a stream, I think, right?
Yeah, we should go over there.
So I'll probably go in there again 2 hours from now. I'll probably have a little lunch break, do a little work, and do that. This is usually what we call shill o'clock. So is there anything that you haven't shilled yet that you'd like to, that I could sort of throw up on the screen? I'll just throw up the X space on the screen in the meantime.
I think if people haven't familiarized themselves with the NSM, they should. So toss that up. Maybe just toss the Shielded Labs website up.
Yeah.
We're always looking for feedback on all of our projects, including Crosslink and NSM. So that's good. And if people are new to Zcash, you should really look into it. It's a really fun rabbit hole to go down. It involves characters like Edward Snowden and lore that predates Bitcoin even.
Yes.
Which is always very fun. So look into Zcash, buy some Zcash, try it out, install Zashi, and then, if you're so motivated, like I said, call for building. We want to see apps and platforms and services and stuff built on this.
That's absolutely
critical.
That's always a good thing. And so my one and only shill thing, which, I guess first public announcement of this, is I am going to be a speaker at Monerotopia in Mexico City, February 12th through 15th. And they put it on the website officially. There's a lot of cool people that I like who are going, like Paul Pway of Edge Wallet is a great friend of mine.
Yeah, Paul's awesome.
Aaron Day, of course, another local guy. I know him. Diego Salazar, or Rerar, as used to be known as. Amir Taki, of course, is, OG. A bunch of other people as well that and of course our friend Xenu from Vlad's podcast and mine as well. And I need to do headshot for mine, but I'm on there. And I know that they are looking for sponsors, of course, as every event is, but also looking for speakers and attendees from the Zcash community. And so I qualify as like the Dash community much more. So that's kind of like the emissary there. We're
going to be shouted down and called slurs the whole time. And
well, last Monerotopia, this is why, last Monerotopia, one person did have a presentation where they were like explicitly mocking me on a slide. So there was that. And there might be again this year, maybe the same person, but I don't care. There's enough cool people where I feel like, safe is, I don't know if safe's the right word, but like I feel like because the Xano people are there, like on the weekly Thursday Dash Space, we co-hosted with Xano, and I talk to their biz dev team all the time about comparing notes. So like I feel like the Xano people are friends. Diego's a friend. Cool. Paul is a really good friend. Like there's a lot of people that I'm getting better with Doug, the organizer now. So anyone else from Zcash, if there's a year for Zcashers, for Zodlers to show up, this would probably be the year where we got a good group of like the broadly across the privacy community is going to be there. So hit me up. I will help you. Cool. You can help them directly if you know Doug, but I can also, if you want to speak, I can help. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think the in-person events are really important to learn that you are not your Twitter account, and you can meet people in person that are very different than their online personas, and it's helpful.
What's funny about that as a final sort of note is I was like, I'm always dumping on Maxis on X all the time, and one day I was in Nashville for the Bitcoin conference, and then someone calls me out by name. Some like skinny dude smoking a cigarette next to the coffee shop I was going into, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, do I know you?" Kind of like, "Oh yeah, I was that basically I was that Maxi troll you were just beefing with like 2 days ago." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, hey.
He's much more cool in person. We're like, "Yeah, shake hands." Like, "All right," and he's like, "For what it's worth, I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying." I'm like, "Fair enough. Let me get my coffee now." Yeah. So yeah, like IRL isn't necessarily as scary. And I know there's going to be a good group of people. I'll make sure I can recruit plenty of good people.
Cool. So yeah.
If you want to go, let me know. We'll get you there. And just make sure you load up on swag before there, because you definitely want to like represent your brand.
Yes. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, hey, this has been awesome. This has been a really awesome conversation. Yes. Really easy to talk, and I was nervous at first. Now I'm not. So this is good.
Well, yeah. Well, because you knew about the Monerotopia stuff, and you're just like, oh, this guy's probably going to be.
Oh, here we go. No, I didn't. I think we were asked to sponsor. I do like Zcash Community Grant or the Zcash Foundation or something like that. I think there's more involvement with Zcash than there might be. They might meet the eye already. Mm-hmm. So it'd be good to
Yeah, it'll be fun, and there's always going to be some people that lose their minds. I know there's some guy who's in the Dash community who's he seems to think that I'm a paid Monero infiltrator, and his big piece of evidence for that is that I want to improve Dash's privacy by using Monero tech or something. And I doubt he watches my stuff, but if he does, this is going to be like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. Like, there you go. This is going to be that moment for him.
He's shilling Monerotopia, guys. I knew it. Yes. The new meme I like is Steve Carell from The Big Short on his phone being like, "Hey, he's shilling Monero. He's shilling," like calling headquarters and being like, "There's a bubble."
Yes, there's a bubble. Yeah. Yes, great stuff. All right, well, I'll let you go and do whatever snack or whatever we have before the other stream. Maybe you have actual work to get done. Maybe that's a thing too. Always. It's so. Thanks everyone for watching. Join in on the Zcash stream on our space on X when that happens in 1 hour and 45 minutes. And I'll see you guys later or on Friday for my usual show, I guess. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.